What's going on, everybody? We are back for UFC Bets and Banter, talking UFC Jacksonville, aka UFC on ABC5, aka UFC Josh Emmett versus Ilia Topuria, another elite featherweight banger. We've got a lot of great fights to talk about, and so I couldn't leave you guys high and dry. Can't be another solo stream. We got to bring on two heavy hitters. So without further ado, we got returning friend of the show. You know him, you love him, Prodigy MMA back in the building once again. My brother, how are you? Been too long.
I'm doing good. It's great to be back, Liam. Break down some fights. We got a great card ahead of us. Let's do this.
I love it, man. Absolutely fired up. And not only a returning friend of the show, we got a brand new friend of the show. Happy to welcome aboard Finesse the Books, my man. We've been going back and forth a little bit trying to set this up. Excited to finally have you on, brother. How the hell are you?
I'm doing good, bro. Same old stuff. Excited to be here. I told you this via DM. I've been watching for a while. Really respect what you do. Truly entrenched into the game. So excited to learn something new. Great card to do it with. It should be a amazing card. Not the biggest name value, but amazing fight. So I'm happy to be here, and let's break down some fights.
Absolutely, man. And as you guys know, we're going to start from the bottom of the card and work our way up. We got 14 fights to break down on this slate. And I must say, it's not the best in terms of name value, but it is the UFC putting their best foot forward on a fight night card. If you look at how we've been dealing with some of these fight night cards with 10, 11 fights getting rescheduled here, there, and everywhere, they've made an effort to put these fights back together that have had people fall out. And we still have 14 fights scheduled on the slate as of now. By the time that it all rolls around, there's going to be somebody who weighs in off and whatever, but probably we're going to deal with 13 or 14 fights. Good for our DraftKings homies out there, but also good for us that are looking to snipe some opportunities. When you got a big fight night card with a lot of fights, the bookies can't be everywhere at once, right? So I always tell people, look for your spots, find your own little angles, your own little nooks and crannies on these cards. Don't roll with the masses, and a lot of good value to be had. But with that being said, guys, let's kick it off with the first fight of the night, a 185-pound bout between Cody Brundage and Sedriques Dumas. A lot of people are not so happy with our guy Sedriques Dumas, right? He was big, talking about how he was going to win the last fight. After the fight, he still had a lot to say. It didn't go his way, right? I ended up taking a play on Josh Fremd as an underdog in that fight. Felt like it was a little bit too much too soon. Guy who's gone 15 minutes with Fluffy Hernandez at plus money against somebody who hasn't proven it in the UFC. That's not what I want to get involved in. Now you give me this scenario, we're dealing with something completely different. I think Cody Brundage is a little unreliable. He's got wrestling upside. He's got some takedowns. He has gone 15 minutes with Nick Maximov, who didn't show himself to be very violent and dangerous at the UFC level. But then you see him going against a lot of these higher level guys, and it's life and death. It's nip tuck. It's barely winning against Tresean Gore. I mean, it's a beautiful knockout, but I didn't think he won an exchange prior. Then he goes out there against Dalcha Lungiambula. He's getting styled on. He's getting landed on with every shot, but he waded through some fire there, outlasted him, got a meme-ish guillotine. God bless him for it. Good stuff. But when you see he gets into these extended fights with guys who are a little more dangerous, I don't like Cody Brundage's chances. And I think Dumas is probably a better natural athlete. He's more explosive and dangerous on the feet. He throws a lot of kicks. He could get taken down because of that. But I think he's actually a dangerous submission grappler in his own right. Not technical at all, but dangerous. He's got good chokes. He's got a good idea of when he should be aggressive. And I think in this fight against somebody like Cody Brundage, he could potentially take advantage of some openings. Cody likes to shoot with his head down, puts himself in some awkward situations. I think Dumas could make him pay with a guillotine choke, popping out on his back. So I think the subline's a little bit busted here at plus 950 or plus 850, whatever it is. And I think that Dumas is a live underdog. So with that being said, Prodigy, what do you think, brother? Am I out to lunch?
Yeah, I mean, Dumas, he had a rough go of it last time. A lot of people backing him. I liked the Frem side. UFC vet has a pretty big underdog price. Brundage trains with Frem at Factory X, former D2 wrestler. Dumas coming out of Port City. He's now training at Fusion XL with Phil Rowe and a couple other guys like that. I think Dumas, he might have had some UFC jitters in his debut. Cody Brundage, he's got a lot of great skills, but he's got a lot of huge weaknesses as well. His cardio, I think it's not great. He's shown sometimes in the Maximov fight, round 3, he fought well. But other times, like Vieira, he'll gas out and pull a guillotine. I mean, I can't back a guy that's pulled guillotine at middleweight 3 times in the UFC. That's just mind-blowing to me, especially against Rodolfo Vieira. Dumas, he's pretty tough. I don't know if people think he's got a lot of finishing power. He likes to just stay outside and throw a lot of kicks. He's not the most dangerous guy, in my opinion. He's got a nice right hand, but not much other than that. Brundage, he's a bit of a gas cannon. His chin, every time he gets knocked out, it's either in the clinch they're hurting him or on the ground. He doesn't really get one-shot KO'd. So it's weird why his chin can't handle those punches. I don't think Dumas is really going to hurt him in the clinch or anything. I think Brundage probably gets his wrestling off early. And I like the over 1.5 here. It's plus money, plus 140. I know it's a popular play taking the under, but I think Brundage, he takes a grappling approach when he fights guys like this who have shown weaknesses before. So I think he's going to take a grappling approach. He doesn't offer much ground and pound on top. He's not the most violent guy. He likes to just control, take the back a little bit, but he never gets his hooks in or anything. I think these guys are going to start to wear down late round 2, round 3, but I think they get us over that 1.5. And I think there's a little value on the Dumas line. If it keeps going up, I might take him, but right now I don't have any plays on him.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I feel like there's going to continue to be love coming in on the favorite here. We've seen it started at a pick 'em price. It's exploded out all the way to a significant favorite, and it looks like it might continue to trend in that direction. So for me, I'm taking a patient approach here. I think if I was to get involved, it'd be on the underdog money line, but no need to force action earlier in the week when the market's kind of shown its hand, pretty aggressively on the Brundage side. So Finesse, do you have any thoughts on this fight? And how do you feel about the matchup and the line movement?
Yeah, I mean, great fight to start the card. I think this was originally on the main card, and now we have it open tonight. So should be a good fight. I think you guys broke it down well. I should 100% not be betting this fight. Cody Brundage is not somebody I want to back at minus 175, minus 190 in that range. Like you guys said, sloppy in a lot of areas, decent in a lot of places, right? Good wrestling, a lot of power. He's going to come out, try to take this guy Dumas's head off. Only really thing that interests me from, just a line perspective, Brundage to win by KO round 1. KO is plus 300. Round 1 KO is plus 450. I think there's some decent value there still. In the free fight, he got Dumas got hurt multiple times. Eventually got submitted. I can't unsee that. I think Brundage is going to put some power on him, get a striking off. It's not going to be the most technical stuff, but like Prodigy said, I think he definitely gets the wrestling involved. I think that's first and foremost in a lot of his fights. He does come in trying to take guys' head off, like I said, but I can't back him at this price. I also can't back Dumas based on what I've seen. Only one UFC fight, but like I said, got hurt a bunch of times. I know his opponent is a dangerous guy, but only thing that would interest me is taking a stab in some plus money areas to start the night. I think there are a lot better options later down the card. So I'm picking Brundage. I think he does win his fight. 2-fight skid. I think it's kind of a back against the wall kind of spot. Short notice. I think this is short notice for Brundage, right? I'm not mistaken on that.
I believe so. It's definitely a short notice booking. It was Dumas and Soriano, the original booking.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that's even more of a reason for Brundage to come out early, often. Gas tank is completely unreliable, like Prodigy mentioned as well. So that's a big concern too, trying to lay juice with a guy like that. So Brundage early, I think. If he knocks, I think that's one of his only paths to victory is to knocking him out. So I'll take the plus 300 stab and the plus 450 stab. But pure fight pick, I think Brundage gets it done.
Yeah, the one thing that I thought was interesting here was that the fight to end by sub is being priced like plus 105 basically across the market. And then Dumas by sub is as high as plus 850. So it's like, you're telling me 50% of the time Brundage wins by sub or the math isn't really adding up there. So for me, that was something that was interesting. Some books have taken other opinions as well. So I think Brundage is the one who's going to force this into the grappling. No doubt about that. I just don't know that he'll be able to have the gas tank to continue to leverage it over time. And if you duck your head enough, if you start getting tired of making mistakes, It only takes one really good position to finish someone with a guillotine, which is why I like the move so much. And that's kind of, for me, a Dumas late sub or a Brundage early finish is how I would see this fight playing out more often than not. And it's partially because Dumas may not be the most potent finisher, but I have Brundage self-immolation as like just a part of my handicap. And I think he self-immolates at a pretty high clip in extended fights. You know, he doesn't like being pressured. He's a good hammer and not a very good nail. And so when Maximov wasn't really hurting him and wasn't testing his chin and things like that, I felt like he was more confident in that fight. He's like, oh, just wrestling the whole time, no problem. But I think Dumas will try and hurt him on the feet and be throwing big shots and make him make mistakes in the grappling. But overall, should be a fun, competitive fight. And maybe the reason it moved from the main card to the beginning, I believe we're on ESPN proper and then ABC for the main card. So they don't want to put some, terrible fight and get everybody to click over to another channel right away. This is going to be an early morning fight, and I think they want to get it started with a bang. So two middleweights that have some fragility, that have some chip on their shoulder here. Both guys need a win right now. Both guys a little embarrassed after their last performance, so should be sparks in the first fight. Next up, we got Tatsuro Taira. I believe this man has the distinction, the only fighter I've ever bet 10 units on twice. And Tatsuro Taira, I thought that the Jesus Aguilar fight was basically the proof of concept, right? Because I bet him at minus 225, I bet him at minus 235, and then he's minus 1,000. But now we're trending back in the other direction, right? Because he's taking a step up in competition here. Jesus Aguilar is a guy who's basically guillotine or bust, right? He went for the guillotine, he didn't get it, and the fight was over. So for me, that was kind of like the reason Taira was so heavily favored there. Some of these other fights, he's not as heavily favored because the bookmakers aren't so sure what he looks like on the feet. He hasn't been forced to stay on the feet very long in the UFC. I think that part of my problem with backing Kleydson here is, number one, I saw in the fight against Vergara, he was mounted multiple times. He had his back taken, and Taira doesn't make the same mistakes as Vergara. Vergara's just not as good offensively at grappling, so he let him off the hook many times. Like, he had him in terrible compromised positions, and then we saw a lot of athletic, dynamic explosions. I watched those two fights back to back. And Taira looked like a minus 500 favorite against Vergara, if not higher, right? Vergara did a decent enough job trying to move around him in the first round, and they had some exchanges on the feet. He had the one arm triangle choke that was never in danger of finishing him. The announcers are not quite sure what they're watching. Like, literally, my guy's got the arm triangle up here, and they think it's going to finish him. Like, it's got to be all the way down here, my guy. But for me, it shows that Taira still has some, gaps in his game. He still leaves some holes for his opponent because he's so aggressive, because he's constantly trying to finish. And I just think that he has a better pace that he could push for 15 minutes than Kleydson. So I think if this fight is just a fight that ends on the feet in round one, maybe it's not a fight that goes his way. But how often does that happen at flyweight? Not extremely often. So I think the longer this fight goes, the more it favors Taira. I think he's got a better, well-rounded skill set. I actually think he's underrated on the feet. He was knocking a lot of guys down and submitting them quickly on the regional scene. And since he's gone to the UFC, he's leveraged more of his wrestling, his grappling. His wrestling has checked out. He's been taking a lot of guys down, and he's been able to build back up to his feet, sweep when he's been put on bottom. So I've liked everything I've seen from him in the grappling. As far as the striking goes, I thought in his last fight he looked a lot more dangerous. He's throwing high kicks. He's getting after it. So I feel like we've seen progression from him over time. I think he's still a dangerous guy. He's got big hands for the division, throws dynamic kicks, doesn't really get the respect always as a striker because of his grappling, but I think he's good everywhere, and I think he's going to win this fight. Prodigy, do you agree or disagree, my man?
Taira, incredible prospect. Both of these guys, we got a great fight between flyweights. Only 23 years old, still undefeated. Rodrigues now training at Shootbox. I'm guessing his main training partner is probably Daniel Santos. You got Charles Oliveira over there. Just a great move on his part to go to that gym. We even saw Rolando Bedoya, guy who fought Chaos Williams. He came in, put on a great account of himself. Taira, his regional tape was a little rough. I didn't like him coming into the UFC. I took Candelario against him, but he really impressed me in that fight. His whole UFC run has been very impressive, to be honest. He loves the backpack. He does struggle to finish the RNC when he gets the backpack, but he finds other submissions. Rodrigues, definitely a first-round fighter, more so than a full 15. But his cardio will last him a little bit. He'll still fight all 3 rounds. And at this price, I can't pass up Rodrigues. This money line is too much, and there's way too much value on his money line. So I'm going to take the underdog here.
Respect. I knew at least one other person was going to be on the dog here, and it's because the market's moving so aggressively, right? Like there's certainly money coming in on Kleydson, and I understand it. I think he's a very talented guy. I just think that there's one guy who's an undefeated prospect for a reason. And I think he's going to keep the train going. But dude, I understand it. He looked better than I remembered when I rewatched him. Aside from the flying butt to the face, the guy was aces. So, he shows a lot of good tape, but I think when it's prospect on prospect, you don't have to lay the minus 250. But in my opinion, I'm taking Taira. Finesse, you got to settle the difference for us, my man. What do you think?
I mean, this is going to be a sick fucking fight. This is going to be a great fight. Yeah, I like both guys. I had the same kind of inkling as Prodigy. Felt like I needed to take a stab at the plus money. Starting with Taira, like Prodigy said, right? Super young, undefeated, 13 wins, 10 by finish, good jiu-jitsu. I also watched both of those fights back to back, and it's really good tape, right? Versus Aguilera, heavy on top, super slick submissions, finished beautifully from the triangle to get the armbar for the finish. And then versus Vergara, at times during that fight, he was straight up ragdolling Vergara. So to see that, Vergara's kind of a bigger guy, a muscly kind of guy. So, it's nice to see that. Definitely some holes in his striking defense. Liam, I think you mentioned that because of the aggressiveness that you were talking about. Decent kickboxing, great timing. The takedown entries are amazing, beautifully timed. Like I said, heavy on top against Vergara. Did get reversed a couple times on the ground. But great kicks, slick and solid wrestling. Took his back off a body lock. That's how he finished that fight. 7 minutes of control time against a guy like that, a guy with a lot of experience. So, I mean, on the Kleydson side, this kid is nasty. I mean, the kickboxing, the kicks to the body, just super nasty stuff. Spinning back kicks, spinning heel kicks. A lot of that shit is in his arsenal. Like I said, great body work, decent boxing. Contender fight versus Cortello. He controlled almost the entire fight. Great showing by him. He fought his fight, pressured the entire fight. I don't know if he's going to be able to do that versus Taira. But then against Vergara, right? Similar opponent versus CJ. CJ, I felt like tested him in a way he hadn't been in the contender series. He pressured him right away and did what Cortello couldn't do in that fight. He cut the octagon off. Rodrigues scores a takedown in round one. But more from Vergara kind of overextended on the feet, which could be a possibility, right, with Taira too. Rodrigues lit him up, vicious kicks, like I said. So this kid is when I was watching the tape, just super impressed, super nasty. Definitely has a chance in any type of fight. Like you guys were talking about, this line is, it opened a lot bigger. It's coming down now. I see on DK Taira's minus 260. I think he wins the fight. I'm going to take the path of parlaying him and Ilia Topuria, which we'll talk about later in the night. Kind of a chalky, kind of square parlay, but I like the value there. I think Taira gets it done. Prodigy mentioned how big of a prospect this guy is. Probably the biggest. I believe he's Japanese. Probably the biggest Japanese prospect that the UFC has ever seen. Maybe. So this kid is like we were talking about, super young, super promising future. I think he's a little bit better everywhere in the fight. So although Kleydson is nasty and he's going to beat a lot of guys in the UFC, I think the ascent for Taira continues, and I think he wins the fight. So from a betting perspective, I'll just pair him with Ilia, but it's going to be a great fight for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's going to be a phenomenal fight. I believe Kyoji Horiguchi was probably the best Japanese prospect until Tatsuro Taira. And the reason I would argue that is because I feel like he was a good fighter, but I don't know that he had the same finishing upside as somebody like Taira, where I think Taira, you mentioned Prodigy, his tape wasn't always perfect on the regional scene, but I felt like he got tested, and I felt like what I saw from him was when he hurt somebody, he puts them away like that. Like he just instantly goes for the choke, locks it on. And those are the kind of finishing instincts that I like to see. It also has cost me some Taira by KO bets, I'm sure, and it will cost me in the future. But I think that this guy is going to be slept on for his ability to win by knockout. I just think in the first round of this fight, Kleydson Rodrigues is much more likely to win by knockout. But as the fight gets extended, I think Taira is dangerous. I think he was beating up Candelario, almost eligible for a 10-8 round in that third round with elbows to the head from that back body triangle. He basically realized, okay, I can't choke you. I might have to beat you up then. And I just think that he continues to add more layers to his game. So Would like to see what he offers this weekend, but I'm rooting for Tatsuro Taira. No max bet for me, like these other guys, a little bit more disposable than Kleydson. Kleidson's a big star, and he was being viewed when he came off Contender Series as like the next big guy from Brazil. He had a little bit of a setback against Vergara. We saw how Taira treated him accordingly, but every matchup is new, right? So it's not to say 1-1, MMA math doesn't work that easy, but I do think we're in store for a great fight at flyweight. Next up, Jamal Emmers taking on Jack Jenkins at 145 pounds. And we got twice the professional experience with Jamal Emmers here. He is the much more seasoned UFC guy, but Jack Jenkins is a bright prospect, right? Comes in with some good leg kicks, 4 takedowns in both of his previous fights. Don Shainis showed up aces, showed up the best he's ever looked in his career. I felt like fought really hard for 15 minutes, wasn't able to get it done. Had a couple submission attempts there. He was able to defend those, but he did get swept. He was getting bucked a little bit from the top position. Didn't seem like he's got a perfect top game. And so Jamal Emmers never been taken down, right? I don't think you're getting no 4 takedowns on Jamal Emmers. The time that he went to the ground with Pat Sabatini, he knocked him to the ground, right? So he knocked down Pat Sabatini, had him hurt, and then basically tried to storm in on him. Pat was underneath, created a leg entanglement, and then it was a disaster shortly thereafter. My man's going for toe holds. He got his knee torn apart. And so that's ultimately my biggest hesitation with this huge price on Jamal, is number one, the fight IQ that suggests, right? It wasn't a great idea to do that. But number two, we also just have seen now a guy who's a little bit older in the division get his knee torn apart in front of us. So how long can he continue to make this work against a guy who's going to try and kick your leg off? That for me is the biggest question mark here. But outside of that, I think the line move suggests that Jamal Emmers is probably the sharper side here. I think there's a lot of public love on the Jenkins side, and it's not being reflected by how the market's moving. So I try and take note of things like that. But I'm curious to hear what you guys think. So we'll mix it up a little bit. Finesse, what do you got on this fight, brother? What do you think about this matchup?
Yeah, you broke it down perfectly. I mean, basically word for word said a lot of, my take on the fight. Huge reach advantage for Emmers, which is obviously worrisome, but I think that's more incentive for Jenkins to do what he does, get in there, scrap, close the distance. The nastiest fucking leg kicks in the world. The sound of those kicks that I was hearing was crazy. So, like you said, with the knee issues that he's had, I think he took almost over a year off after that happened. So that's going to be a major problem for him. I think that'll kind of not negate, but help with the range issues and kind of help get Emmers a little off of him. Like you said, Emmers never been taken down. I do think there'll be points in the fight where Jenkins is deep into some stuff, deep into some advancements and some shots, and maybe get him down. I think the advantage is there for Jack. I just can't get off this price. I really like Jack Jenkins as a fan. And now I'm getting this price. Hold on, I just had it pulled up. Current price plus 170 on DK. Probably get a little bit better elsewhere. But I like that price. So I'm going to be taking Jack at the plus 170. I look for some props too. What I really like, and this line just moved as well. So still a little bit juice, but like I said, a big move in the last even couple of hours. I think this line was minus 145 a couple of hours ago. Jack Jenkins plus 3.5 on the spread. I think that's only on DK. I might be wrong, but only on DK. Just has to win one round on all judges' scorecards, and I think he does it. I think this is more of a back and forth fight. But I'm gonna definitely be taking a stab at that plus 172. I think UFC placing him against definitely a step up in competition to Emmers. Emmers is a dog. I mean, we saw it versus Giga, really close fight. A fight that I watched it a couple times after the first time watching it. I thought Emmers won. I thought Emmers won. After the second time watching it, I thought Emmers won again. So, but super close fight. Definitely showed himself on the feet. And then against Asgabov did the same thing. Just outlasted him 30-27 to undefeated guy, 23-0 guy, tough featherweight prospect. So I like Emmers. I think he does a lot of things well. But at that price, I'm going to take Jack Jenkins. There's a Perth card later in the year. I'm sure the UFC would love a great performance and throw him right back on that Perth card. So, I'm going to take Jenkins. I think the safer play, and now you're getting that at less juice at minus 130, is the plus 3.5, just banking him to win a round on all three judges' scorecards. But I'll definitely be taking a shot at the plus 170. I think he gets it done. So at that price, I'm in.
I like it. And, that was my gut lean as well. But I didn't get there, right? I kind of am letting the market play out a little bit on this one. I didn't expect to see this big move, right? So that for me is already enough to wait and see how this plays out. getting closer to fight time. But I love that you gave us a little narrative nugget there. The narrative nugget I will give as I pass this off is I believe Jamal Emmers was born in Miami, Florida. So he is a Floridian by birth, but he's training out in California. He switched allegiances on us East Coast guys. Now he's one of them West Coast guys. So, more power to him. But, maybe he loses some bona fides. What do you think, Prodigy? I'm just playing.
Yeah, shout out to my guy Jamal Emmers for beating up on that fraud in his last fight. 23-1 now, I believe it is. This line's gone a little out of hand. I was looking to play the Jamal Emmers side. I still got to dig into the Jenkins tape a little bit, but it's looking like a pass right now for me.
Yeah, for Jenkins, to give my brief summary of what he does well, he throws vicious leg kicks. He's very aggressive. You could tell he wants to win. He's not a quitter. He can get hit with big shots and keep coming forward. So I think a lot of that is positive. And I think that he makes a lot of the right decisions, but he's also an aggressive guy. He's gotten swept. He's done some things that are kind of like young, boneheaded type decisions from guys as well. So this is a big step up for him against a more experienced guy. But I do think he presents interesting challenges. He's much smaller than Jamal, but he hits very hard to the legs. And again, surgically repaired knees at minus 225, 35-year-old guys in one of the lowest average age divisions, featherweight, which we'll talk about that more later on. But again, we're just talking about, two guys that might be at slightly different points in their career. And maybe one guy still got more of a chance to keep climbing. So I like what I saw from Jenkins, but it's more of a prove it spot for me. So keep my hands off for now, but if it hits plus 200, they might be forcing my hand. They left me no choice. Next up, we got 155 pounds scrap between Trevor Peek and Chepe Mariscal. And Chepe is a guy that, I have a big index of tape. And so I said, he comes up a bunch, right? For all these other guys that have made it to the UFC, he's on highlight reels, he's on this, but he's got the win over Sabatini that I had taped as well. So I kind of knew that this guy was around the level, but they don't always bring in the 13-6 guy to the UFC, to the big show. So I found this matchup interesting overall. You see, originally Trevor Peek was scheduled to take on Victor Martinez, and Victor Martinez withdrew from the bout. So short notice, stepping in here. Another guy out of Colorado, I believe, for Chepe Mariscal, just double checking that. Elevation Fight Team. Yeah, so Colorado represent. They got a bunch of guys on the card. Factory X has some representatives as well. But curious to hear what you guys think. I'm going to set up my guy Prodigy first to give your thoughts on this matchup, my guy. What do you think about Trevor Peek's second UFC outing?
Yeah, I'm excited to see Chepe finally get a shot in the UFC. Every time he's gotten a chance, it seems he loses the fight. I mean, 5 of his 6 losses are to former or current UFC fighters. Gregor Gillespie just ran through him a couple years ago. He had a very close fight with Bryce Mitchell. He actually took the 3rd round in that fight, grappled him up a little bit. He's a tough fighter. He does have a bit of a cardio issue in round 3. Sean Soriano was grappling him in round 3. He got 30-27 in that fight. It was honestly a major red flag for me there. But he's got knocked out by Brito, and the Steve Garcia fight, I don't know how that was stopped, but he was getting banged around a lot in that fight. Wasn't looking too sharp. He's a smaller guy. I'm surprised he's going up to 55 and he misses weight all the time at 45. Peek is a big dude. It looks like, from my perspective, very strong for the division. He's got not much technique, but if you dropped him back in UFC 12, UFC 15, he would fit right in on the card. Go and smash some guy's head back in 1998. But this guy is tough. You can take him down. He uses the Derek Lewis method, just get up jitsu, and he works his way back to the feet. He'll land his own takedowns every once in a while. He's got some judo throws in there I've seen. I was kind of impressed by that. The Gonzalez fight, he was working this guy on the feet. Gonzalez was trying to get the fight to the floor by any means necessary. He did not want to strike with this dude. I think Chepe could have some success early in this fight. Round 1, Might land some takedowns, calf kicks, couple right hands. But I think he's going to start to wear down as this fight goes on. I like Peek, round 2, 3 KO plus 600. I think there's some nice value on that. Just keeps working his way back in the fight, which he seems to do in every fight. And this guy's made of steel. So let's get a late round finish for my guy Trevor Peek. And they got that Nashville card coming up. I think if he comes out of here clean, they might try and flip him on there and make this guy a star while they can run him on the low-level fighters.
Yeah, shout out to Cody Safdie. He actually mentioned this week that he had spoke to Trevor Peek, and that's what the UFC told him. If you go out there and get a quick win, something like that, we could run you back out there for Nashville. That would be a huge opportunity for him. So I think that might be the only thing that will jeopardize your ticket. I love the number, but I think Trevor Peek might be going, for a speed trial. And, he, like you mentioned, he doesn't do anything very technically. And Chepe is a tough guy, but he does show 2 first-round knockout losses. And, this is another opportunity for him to get one of those, unfortunately. Trevor Peek swings big hammers and bungalows. And, Chepe just seems like a guy who might get into an ego battle, might get out there swanging and banging on the feet. And this is probably the wrong guy to do that with. He's not afraid to get hit, to get hurt. He doesn't seem like he is aware that he can be knocked out. So I think Trevor Peek, until it all falls off the wheels, like this guy's going to be going heavy. And when I talk about, my own experience, the last guy you want to go against is the guy who just is not afraid of anything, who doesn't want to, like, there's no thing that could make him quit or give up. Like, that's a guy you don't want to go against. And I just feel like Trevor Peek represents that right now. So hands off this fight. I know that a lot of early money came in on Chepe, but I think at a pick'em price, I'd be leaning towards the Peek side. What about you, Finesse?
Yeah, 100% agree. I mean, you guys did a great job breaking it down. Not much to add. On FanDuel, I'm taking Trevor Peek by KO round 1 plus 260 and round 2 plus 900. I'm taking a stab at both of those. I'll also be betting Trevor Peek, like you said, down to the money, the pick and price. I got to bet Peek there. So that's been Peek's only win condition is obviously first round knockout or second round knockout. So I think the prices there are too wide. Plus 290, I wish I can get a little better price on that. Maybe I can. I'll look elsewhere, but wishing for a little bit of a better price on that, but still in on that. And round 2 at plus 900, I think it is way too wide. So I'm going to take those. Like you guys said, both of these guys, I think, are going to come in, want to bang. Trevor Peek, I think, has the advantage wrestling, grappling wise. If Peek does get hurt on the feet, I think he can use that to kind of give himself some room and save the fight for himself too. So I like that you mentioned the kind of narrative stuff. Come in, get a quick finish, fight at UFC Nashville. I think that's even, a short notice fight. Like Prodigy said, is going to be the bigger guy. Reach is about the same, but he's going to be bigger in there. So I like Peek in a swinging and banging match, like you were saying, Liam, until the wheels fall off. I'm a back Peek in those spots. So I think there's going to be a time where he gets absolutely fucking exposed by a technical striker, a guy that's going to throw straight, powerful shots and maybe have the advantage on the ground as well. So I think there's going to come a time where Peek gets exposed, but I don't think against Chepe, this is the matchup to do so. So like you said, if Chepe gets into that, standing brawl, it's going to be a problem. And I expect that's what's going to happen. So I think Peek wins this fight, ends it early. Happy to take a shot at those plus money prices. And then I also take Peek to win at even money.
I like it, man. Prodigy, did you have something you wanted to add?
I mean, did you guys see that Brito fight? After the fight, he was trying to fight the ref. They had to carry him out of the cage before the decision was read. I mean, that was a pretty big knockout. I don't know how your chin comes back from that. Some guys, they don't.
I tend to agree. And also, Brito is a guy that I was backing in the UFC because I went back and seen a lot of his footage, and I knew just how dangerous this guy was. Everybody was telling me Feely's the parlay piece of the week. And I was like, I don't know about all that. And Brito, plus 1,000, he was ITD, just absolute insane numbers. And then you see how much that gets corrected. Whereas now we're looking at a guy who we basically know that's his win condition here. I'm trying to think who is he the closest archetype to of all the opponents Chepe's ever fought? probably somebody like Joe Anderson Brito. Brito's much better on the ground, no doubt about that. But in terms of just what we saw from that fight, Brito's just a swang and bang, big power, get in your face, explode on you before you're ready, and see who's more tough and who wants it better and who hits harder. That just seems like a fight Peek could win. So I'm taking him to model himself after Joe Anderson Brito and go find the knockout here. But next up, boys, we've got a fight at 125 pounds here. Flyweight action. Zhalgas Zhumagulov taking on Joshua Van. And Joshua Van hasn't really taken on the highest level of opposition. Still very young in his career. But to be honest with you, he looks like the more dynamic athlete to me of these two guys. You know, I think I'd be most concerned for him about getting taken down here, about experiencing UFC jitters, about being on short notice, about stumbling in some of the ways that we just know guys that are talented to stumble early on in their UFC run. But he doesn't seem like a guy who's going to be out of place in the UFC 2 or 3 fights from now. I feel like he's a guy that's got some real skills. So he seems like a dangerous, fun, aggressive kind of guy. This is a big step up, though. Zhalgas has fought a lot of the best guys. He's been around for a long time. He's not a guy that's easily put away. But he's not a guy that's easily distinguishing himself over his opponents either. He's not a guy who's easily taking people down and holding them down on the ground and controlling them. So there's really just not a ton of wiggle room for me. With Zhalgas at 65%, it's like, I mean, okay, like fair enough. Like just could never bet him at that kind of price here. So for me, I feel like Van, I don't know enough about him. I'm not fired up to go play him, but everything that I saw, he seemed like he's more aggressive than Zhalgas and maybe a touch more dangerous as well. So yeah, I would lean towards the underdog or pass here. And I never expected to say that, right? On my first look this week, I said, you know, I have to go with Zhalgas. I've never even heard of this guy. But then just watching his game, he just looks more aggressive, like a guy who judges maybe would be a little bit more akin to giving a decision to. So, Prodigy, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, I mean, are we going to finally see our guy Zaddy the Batty in the cage? I've been waiting quite a few weeks. I taped his opponent like 3 or 4 times in a row, and then it gets canceled. He's got a good one here. This 21-year-old kid he's solid. But Double Z is a well-rounded fighter, ton of experience. He can work his grappling and his striking. He does slow down a little bit later in the fight. But Van, 20-year-old Fury FC champ. He trains at 4 Ounce Fight Club in Houston with Daniel Pineda and Domingo Pilarte. Decent little camp over there. It's nice to see another guy out of Houston. But his strength schedule is a little weak. And he's willing to step in the cage with an experienced vet like Zhalgas, so I give him some props on that. But I think the experience and consistency is going to take over here. Zhalgas not much of a finisher. So I took his round 3 decision prop, minus 127. It's a decent look in my opinion. I don't see him finishing this fight, and I think he finally is on the right side of the judge's decision here. So we'll see.
I like it, man. You know, it would be nice to see him get one, even one that he doesn't deserve. You know, let's just kick one back to him, you know, for hard time's sake. But I just think, you know, he just fights very close. So that for me is the ultimate fear. But seems like a lot of the chat, I always say sharpest chat in the game. Seems like there's a consensus in the chat. You know, he's going to get it done, but he's going to get it done by that split decision. You know, just get it over the line. So cash my guy, Prodigy's bet. Finesse, do you have any bets on this fight? Anything you're excited about here?
Yeah, I mean, 100% agree. I most likely won't be betting this fight. I think Zhalgas wins the fight, but at minus 200, like you said, he's not a guy I'm going to lay minus 200 on ever. I think he's going to be better a lot of places, especially in the grappling element. You know, Van's an exciting fighter. 7 wins, all by finish. You know, subs in there, finish a guy with a fucking calf slicer. So all different type of stuff he got going on. Should be an exciting fighter for as long as he can kind of keep that up versus a guy like Zhalgas. If he's, you know, if Zhalgas is not hitting all his takedowns, you know, Van having to defend that stuff and maybe be on the back foot at times during this fight is going to wear on him. We haven't seen him going deep. Obviously, UFC debut, it's a major step up for him. So Zhalgas is like the bar for me, right? If you can get past a guy like Zhalgas, you deserve a UFC spot, and we'll see where you go from there. But I think there's a chance Zhalgas might look like a minus 300, minus 400 in this fight. I think there's a good possibility of that. So not really comfortable with any of the props. I think Zhalgas can get it done in a variety of places. You Van gasses out, there's a litany of ways that Zhalgas can take advantage of that, whether by finishing them on a ground and pound, stuff like that, ref stoppage. So Zhalgas is going to win a fight. I'm not laying minus 200 with him. So that's how I feel.
Yeah, I think for Van, he would probably have to maximize his upside with like a knockout or something like that. I think he could grease a split decision, but I don't think that's at a very high clip because I expect he could give up some takedowns here. He's giving up takedowns to some lower level guys. But he kind of reminds me, I thought it was a great point that you mentioned out of 4 Ounce Fight Club. What comes to mind when you think 4 Ounce Fight Club fighters? Kill or be killed. That's the only thing that, again, is like a little bit nerve-wracking here. It's like this guy, Josh Van, it's like all the time trying to fight for the kill. And the only guy that Zhalgas was able to put away was Jerome Rivera because they got into a very aggressive fight in the early going and he got that submission. So if Josh Van is trying to force that grappling and like get all up in his business the whole fight, he almost might bring that dog out of Zhalgas that we never see. So it's an interesting fight. ZZ Top trying to get back on track here, but I'm going to leave this one alone. I think I'll leave it to the professionals like my guy Prodigy sniping a good angle there. So next up, we got Tabatha Ricci taking on Gillian Robertson at women's strawweight here. And another tricky fight to break down because Gillian Robertson, she's got a very potent submission game at the women's flyweight division. Kind of felt like there was a ceiling on it, though. She felt when she got to girls that were more physical, that could match some of those dimensions in the grappling, that could negate some of that, she really started to struggle. So now she moved down to 115 pounds, looked good in her last fight. I thought she even overperformed against Piera Rodrigues, gave up 1 takedown there, got 2 of her own, was able to get the submission, against a girl who's pretty physically domineering at 115. So Piera Rodrigues, obviously not a very proven commodity, but had a lot of the things that you'd think would make it interesting, right? She's strong. She likes to wrestle a little bit in her own fights. And she got out-wrestled and out-grappled there. So now the question is, can Gillian Robertson out-wrestle and out-grapple a black belt at 115 pounds? Because that's what she's got here in Tabatha Ricci. And Tabatha Ricci is getting, a bunch of takedowns in all of her UFC fights. 4 or 5, I think, was her minimum so far. So what I've noticed from her is she's known when she was safe and when she wasn't safe, right? When she was starting to get into some dangerous exchanges with Polyana Viana, she's like, you know what? I'm going to stand up out of the guard. I don't need to do this. I'm going to kick her in the legs. I'm going to try and win this on optics. And as a person that had bet on her that night, you bet your ass. Yeah! Woo! I'm cheering. I'm yelling. It's the most boring fight of all time. People are turning off their television, going doing something else. But because I had the money on it, I'm cheering. I'm celebrating it. She fought smart, right? She just doesn't put herself in unnecessary risk. The only fight that we've seen her fold up shop and just get out of there was against Manon Fiorot. Why? She couldn't get takedowns. Manon was taking her down, and she was getting beat the hell up. All right, I could give you a break. Came in at 125 on short notice against one of the girls that nobody wants to fight in the division. Fair enough. We'll give her your pass. But then she comes down. Polyana Viana has a dangerous guard. Jessica Panay is a black belt, and she easily diced through them. So I'm just like, what is to say that Gillian Robertson, just because she cut to 115, is now like automatic that she's going to, for me, it's an open question. So I think this is a stiff test for Gillian Robertson, in terms of moving from Piera Rodrigues to here, because I think Tabatha Ricci is better than Piera Rodrigues and more versed on the ground, especially. And that's where Gillian exerts herself. She doesn't go out there and exert herself on the feet. She got standing TKO'd by Maycee Barber. I rewatched that fight for other taping purposes today. Boy, oh boy, that one was not very competitive, right? And she shot for a couple ugly takedowns. She pulled herself into bottom guard in that fight. She doesn't like being hit. You could tell every time she fights. So for me, Ricci's not the most dangerous girl. She's pretty small. But is that going to make it easier or harder for Gillian Robertson to get takedowns here? I'm not sure. Lower center of gravity. And we haven't seen her taken down except by Manon Fiorot. So I think it's a really tough fight for Gillian. But it's a fight where whoever wins, I think, is going to look like a big hindsight favorite. Because if Gillian is just stronger, muscles her around, and takes her to the ground, maybe she's just better on the ground and she makes it look easy. But that's not what I see when I'm watching these two. I think Tabatha Ricci is pretty strong for 115. She's not huge and muscling, but I do think that she's strong and knows her positions. I think she's got good hips. So I don't think she's going to get bodied by Gillian Robertson here. Finesse, we'll kick it to you first, my man. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, this is definitely the Simp Championship of the world right here. This is a real BMF title fight right here. This is going to be a great fight. I love this fight. So I agree with you. It's definitely a step up for Gillian. If the line was flipped, I probably have no interest in Gillian. I don't want to back Gillian as a minus 150 plus favorite, but I love her in this matchup as a dog. I see plus 115 on DK. I already locked it in a couple days ago. I'm gonna go in again if the price keeps going Ricci's way. Just get a better price. I'll definitely be more exposed on Gillian. I think it's a great matchup for her. Where is this? So, yeah, I mean, like you said, definitely a step up. Both girls aren't great strikers at all, but I still give Ricci the advantage there. Robertson, in my opinion, clearly has a grappling advantage. Like you said, she's going to be the bigger girl. Gillian is just elite on the ground. She's shown it time and time again against the quality of opponents on her resume. Win or loss is it pops off the page and it's super impressive. Robertson's going to be the younger, the bigger, the longer fighter. She's a bigger strawweight, more experience, 14 UFC fights. Ricci only has 4. The size is, I think, going to be the biggest thing. She's going to, like you said, Ricci's Robertson has fought at bigger weight classes, and she was even kind of big in those weight classes, and now kind of coming down. And Ricci's small, still kind of small for the weight. Robertson's the better finisher, 10 finishes and 12 wins. Like I said, Robertson has the experience versus bigger strawweights. For that flyweight, Robertson has had success against girls she can bully, and we've seen that time and time again. Fighting, your 4th pro fight being against Cynthia Calvillo. Cynthia Calvillo is a fucking dog. The names on her resume: Hannah Cyphers. She fought. I was just looking at it. Sorry, my fucking brain. JJ Alvarez, Maria Maverick, Tyler Santos, Maycee Barber. So, like I said, her resume is deep. I definitely agree. I think looking back, the winner of this fight is going to look like either a bigger favorite or should have been the massive favorite in this fight. Ricci's dangerous. I give it as is definitely a step up. But at plus money, I think Gillian continues to roll, shows off that strength and that size, and gets the job done. And at plus money, I'll take that all day. I think this just boils down to it being a disrespectful line, and we're still getting better prices. I think I locked it in at plus 105 on my book, and now seeing plus 115 on DK. I will take that all day. So I love the matchup for Gillian. Give me Gillian in this fight.
I like where your head's at, and I would honestly say if you love the Gillian Robertson side, you may even want to look towards this fight doesn't go to decision, because the one thing about Gillian, and the thing that for me has been a cause of great pause in backing her in the past, it's just she doesn't have a great record in decisions, and WMMA is like the decision factory, right? But then she has proven to be an exception to the rule, right? She goes out there and finishes at a much higher clip than the average woman, but 2-5 in decisions. I'm like, oh God, like, it's a little bit scary to me, because the other side here is Tabatha Ricci is 4-0 in decisions. That was most of my rationale against Polyana Viana, right? Polyana Viana, dangerous finisher, gets a lot of credit. But if she couldn't finish, I just felt like she was going to be drawn dead, playing a lot off her back. That was, for me, the concern. And for Gillian Robertson, she loves getting on the ground to the point where she has a 25% takedown defense. And so it is against good girls. And most of the time, you look at the people that took her down, it's like, oh, that makes sense. But she still is giving up the takedowns and oftentimes like pulling herself backwards. And I just think against Ricci showed me that she can make the right decisions to stand up out of the guard if it gets too tricky and kick the legs and do whatever it takes to eat that decision. So for me, that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping the books are right lining this to go the distance. But I think if it doesn't go to decision, it's probably because Gillian Robertson got the job done sometime earlier. What do you think, Prodigy?
Ricci, she's coming off a couple wins. The Vienna win was pretty impressive. Robertson, she's got a decent size advantage here, 5'5" compared to 5'1". Every girl Robertson's lost to has been a bigger 125er. Maverick, Aldrich, Tyler Santos, MBS, and Barber. And Ricci, she's very small for the division. I'm not going to try to be a jiu-jitsu ace and pick a side here. That's not my specialty. While everybody's picking their sides in the sim battle, I'm going to stay out of it, and I'm going to take the fight goes the distance, minus 180. I loved what you said, Liam, where Ricci's very smart. If she gets in trouble, she backs out, takes her time. I think this goes the distance at 70%, 75%, and The juice at minus 180 is good value.
Dude, I love where your head's at. So in fact, maybe this is one of the times where if Gillian has the better grappling, maybe she's able to get some takedowns, whatever. But Ricci has shown to be quite conservative, right? Like self-preservation streak against Manon Farrow. And then also she's gotten good top position, whatever. She doesn't always force a finish. She doesn't always force even advancement. So I think, she's the kind of girl that's going to trend towards decisions. By and large, in wins and losses, I would think, moving forward in her career. So I like where your head's at, man. Interesting way to break down this fight, though, because it's two girls that, it's kind of like who's really got something to offer at 115. Because if you can't beat, a Tabatha Ricci for Gillian Robertson, where is your ceiling at 115? How many people are you going to be able to leverage the grappling skill set against? But if she is able to do it, it's like, wow, against black belt, she's still able to get takedowns, get finishes, maybe she could start winning decisions at 115. I think all of this could be really interesting data points moving forward as well, because Tabatha Ricci is still very young in her career. So again, I don't feel compelled to play her, but my lean is Tabatha Ricci here. I think she's going to get this done by a close split decision. Next up, we got Mateusz Rebecki at 155 pounds. Some would say that I look just like him. I don't always see it, but I appreciate it nonetheless. Loic Radzhabov will be his opponent. Tajikistan, I wonder if they're going to have the whole arena just for this guy. Probably not. They had the two guys on the card. They had the whole arena out there. It might just be 15 guys at a bar like, hey, like Loic's fighting this weekend. But he is a guy that's put together, a pretty decent resume. He's fought some good guys in PFL. It just hasn't normally gone his way. He's fought better guys. Normally he loses those fights. He loses close decisions. And that's how he's stuck around at the higher levels. He's a tough guy. He's pretty durable, hard to put away. Cardio doesn't seem like it's a selling point. It seems like something that maybe it was UFC jitters, right? We can give some excuses, but I felt like he was definitely slowing down considerably in his last fight. He was leveraging a lot of takedowns. I don't think he's taking down Mateusz Rebecki, point blank, period, simple. If he does, I think he's doing it once or twice. I don't think he's doing it 11 times, and I don't think he's controlling him. I would be more surprised if he did that than if Mateusz Rebecki took him down. I think Mateusz Rebecki is the better grappler. I think he's a better wrestler. I think he's slightly better on the feet. But I also think that the last fight wasn't a great selling point. His cardio didn't look as good as it did in Europe. Maybe he changed his supplementation. He got a new doctor. He forgot something at home. I don't know what happened there, but I did think that was a little bit concerning, a little bit jarring. I'm hoping that he just gets back to form. You have two guys coming off of a UFC debut, and I think that maybe Rebecki coming off that win is not getting the respect that he had prior. Because you look at the Contender Series, huge favorite against a guy who I thought was going to be pretty tough, and I thought he was going to win. I thought he was going to submit him, but I thought it was going to be a tough fight while it lasted. He looked very clinical there, and then he got to the big show, and he struggled a little bit. I feel like we might see a more refined version of him in this fight. I think he might look better here. But again, Loic's not a guy that's been easy to look good against. So it's a tricky fight for me. I stared at this at minus 125. I was like, damn, I might have to take that. And then I woke up, it's minus 150. I was like, all right, that made my decision for me, right? I felt like the value had been extracted. But this is a line that's done a little pendulum swing, right? Opened up with Rebecki a bigger favorite. It's come all the way down, and then it's starting to drift back a little bit. The market's obviously seeing resistance at a certain point, right? Rebecki seems like the consensus favorite, but how much? It's a question of degree. And I do think that he showed enough vulnerability in this last fight that you could have questions. But I also think we've now seen two samples from Nick Fiore. And what did he try to do? Survive. And it's not a criticism, really. He's underdeveloped. He's here too early. He doesn't know everything he should be doing. So he's just trying to make it to 15 minutes, try not to get hurt too bad. I felt like that's what he did against Rebecki, and I felt like that's what he did against Chase Hooper. So I want to give Rebecki a little bit more of a breathing room, a little bit of a chance. I think his submission line is a little wide here, to tell you the truth, at plus 700. Loic's never been submitted, but I do think he's a little bit gassy, and I do think Rebecki can hurt him and club and sub him, and I also think he could out-grapple him if the fight gets late. So, for me, I thought plus 700 was a little wide. I think on Contender Series, it was like plus 350, plus 400. I played it there, and I normally don't play sublines that close, but I just thought he was the goods on the ground, and I think he still is. So Loic's a tough guy. He's a good fighter, but I think this could be where the rubber meets the road. It'll come down to who can get takedowns, though. If Loic's the one getting takedowns, I'm just dead wrong about this fight, but I think Rebecki is going to be able to stuff those takedowns and get some of his own. Prodigy, my man, kick us off. What do you got, brother?
Yeah, both guys I think are going to try to mix in some takedowns. I agree. I don't know how much success Loic is going to have. I backed him quite a few times in the PFL. He's shown cardio issues before. Sometimes he's shown some decent cardio. It's a bit of a mixed bag, especially you don't know what you're going to get. He's out of the PFL now with his PED, maybe something like that. I don't know. Rebecki, his regional tape was incredible. The fight against Lidio was great, and then Fiore performance was quite interesting. But as you said, Fiore just tries to survive. It's hard to finish a guy that's just trying to survive on the ground. I don't care who you are. He even showed it against Chase Hooper. Chase Hooper was kicking the shit out of him, which was a nice underdog play, by the way, whoever took that.
You know I
yeah,
did.
I think Mateusz probably let's go. Mateusz probably takes over late. I mean, I think this is priced pretty accurately. I'd put him like 160 maybe, but I don't know. This is a pass for me overall.
Fair play, man. And the thing is, if it turns out to be a fight where neither guy can leverage their wrestling, then it's probably going to be two guys that both kind of just swang and bang on the feet. They're not the most technical guys. They both got pretty good chins, and that could lead to a greasy split decision. So if that's how you envision this fight going down, I could see how you get to the underdog here. But I think Rebecki has the wrestling advantage, so that's why I ultimately lean that side. But I think that's the sliding scale. It's like minus 125, I don't think he's getting takedowns. Minus 180, the market thinks he's getting takedowns. So that for me is a compelling part of this. What do you think, Finesse?
Yeah, give me the dog. I think this is a big dog card. I think there's a lot of dogs that I like. I think there's a lot of dogs that can get the job done. Give me Loic. Give me Loic in this fight. I think Rebecki, I'm terrible with these last names, especially these Russian guys, or wherever he's from. I think Rebecki's on fraud alert with all due respect. Nobody that steps on the octagon is a fraud, but I think we're gonna see him lose this one. You guys mentioned a bunch of Nick Fiore fight, and I understand what he's shown previously, and after you guys mentioned he got Chase Hooper absolutely beat the shit out of him. So I know that's what we've seen on his tape, but still, before that fight, Fiore, I believe his longest fight was only like 6 or 7 minutes. So Rebecki was just able to kind of take over that fight and win the decision. But and the quality of competition, like you guys mentioned, Razabov, he's been in a PFL. The strength of competition is going to be a lot better than Rebecki's is. I had to pretty much sell my firstborn to get access to his regional tape and the FEN or whatever you call it. So now taking a big step up. The progression that I've seen, from the PFL, his latest stages in the PFL, the Eagle FC fight, and then his UFC debut, he was piecing up Ribovics, however you say it. He was piecing him up, and as the deeper he gets into his career, and as I watched the fights in order, right? And the later I got in his career, the more I like the striking, the more I seen his striking improve. The gas tank that you mentioned, I'm seeing that improve, and I think he'll have the gas tank edge. Liam, you talk a lot about guys gassing and that making a coward out of all of us, and I think the edge there is Razabov's. I think the cardio edge is Razabov. So Rebecki is wild as fuck on the feet. Both of these guys can be wild on the feet. I think he's going to walk into some shots. Razabov's hooks are nasty. I think he's going to walk into some big power shots. And I think Rebecki gets exposed in this fight. So give me the dog. It could wind up being, like you said, a closer fight, a fight that goes to decision, a fight that looks pretty close of us watching it live. And even in that situation, give me the dog price. So give me the plus 130 on Razabov to win. And then his knockout is plus 650 on DK. I think that is way too wide. If he's walking into shots, both of these guys are going to be throwing big shots, big power. But Rebecki, I think Razabov, I think is going to be a little bit cleaner. I think he's going to land more, and I think he's very, very live to get Rebecki out of there. So give me the plus 650 as just a small sprinkle, and give me the dog at plus 130 to win the fight.
I like it, man. Coming in with conviction and a man after my own heart, I must say, going for dogs. I mean, I prefer to be a dog better. So if it speaks to me, I ride with the dog. For me, The one thing that I didn't love is Loic was getting 11 takedowns, which means the guy's getting back up, back up, back up. I felt like he didn't have an ability to rest on top. Whereas Rebecki, that was the whole grievance with him. It's like all he did was rest on top, right? Just get on top and park the bus. He's like, I don't have to move on this guy. I think that in this fight, that's the one maybe dynamic that I think could separate it. It's like if Rebecki gets takedowns, I think he might be able to park the bus a little bit and create some top pressure. But I think the thing that stood out about Loic is, yeah, he did gas out in the third round in his last fight, but getting 11 takedowns in the process and throwing a lot of volume out there. So if you're going to spend yourself for victory, if you're going to gas out, by putting out a ton of volume and activity, I mean, that's not really, I can't really ask much more of you than that. Sell out, give me my college wrestling coach used to say, give me everything. If we have to carry you off the mat at the end of it, then that's fine. But then I know you gave me every single thing you had. And I feel like for me, Loic, he's never been finished, right? He's going to give you everything. So you could definitely find worse ways to invest in an underdog. But I think Mateusz Rebecki is a solid fighter, and I think he could get back on track here as well. So fun fight at 155, globally competitive division. Next up, 170 pounds. Wellington Turman making his welterweight debut, taking on Randy Rude Boy Brown. And Randy Brown making a really quick turnaround, in my view. Something I don't love to see here. 4-month turnaround after getting bamboozled on the feet and then submitted by Jack Della Maddalena. But you can imagine he wants to get the taste of that one out of his mouth. I'm sure that among guys that the UFC could offer him, you get offered Wellington Turman, maybe that piques your attention a little bit because Turman has just had a questionable chin in the UFC, right? Now he's coming down to 170. I think that could make it even worse, right? That could make it even more questionable. Or it could be an improvement. Or we could find out that he has to get in better cardiovascular shape and he could take the shots better at 170. So for me, it's a little bit of an open question, right? And anytime you have uncertainty, it should push the line a little bit closer to 50-50. But then you look at the skills. I think on the feet, Randy Brown is superior. I just think he's a better fighter. I think he moves better. I think he lands better shots. But he's also a guy that just does a couple boneheaded things per fight that make you less willing to bet him at a minus 250. He's going out there and winning these decisions against some lower level UFC fighters, but he's also just not always putting a stamp on it against guys that have been knocked out many times. He's not always putting them away. So those are some of the criticisms of Randy Brown's game, but he's made some improvements. One thing I noticed, I don't think he's ever won a fight in the UFC where he gave up 2 or more takedowns. I think he's like 50-50 in fights where he gives up 1 takedown. I think he could easily get taken down by Wellington Turman in the first round of this fight. He's a long guy. Big, long legs are like the recipe for getting taken down easily in the UFC. And Turman could have some strength here. He was competing with guys at 185. He's got a tiny frame. So if he can't make it at 170, this just isn't for him, I don't think, But he does have plus-level training partners. He does have a 26-year-old will to win, right? He's going to go out there and be ornery and try and get it done. I think he's outskilled in this fight, especially standing. But I can't write him off here as an underdog. And I'm like the biggest Wellington Turman hater. After he cost me that bag against Bruno Silva, where he literally had his back easily in round 1, falls off, gets hit 3 times, and the fight's over, you won't get my forgiveness after that. I literally wrote him off for a long time. But I did take him against Misha Serkinov because Misha Serkinov is even more fraudulent and even more liable to fall apart than Wellington. So Wellington's ground game is not bad, but his cardio, his durability, nothing is checked out perfectly on the feet. His striking against Sam Alvey, looked not very good. So all sorts of red flags in this fight, but overall, I think Randy Brown is coming back too soon. So I just can't back him at a minus 250. I don't think Wellington's the guy to test your chin, but Randy doesn't have a great chin. So I think Wellington not having a great chin is normally the big standout thing in a fight. But again, I just can't trust Randy. He doesn't have a great chin, and he's coming back 4 months after getting hurt very, very badly by JDM. So I think he should win this fight. I think he's the better fighter, but this is banana peel territory to me at minus 250. What do you think, Finesse?
Yeah, 100% agree. I don't really like this fight, so I won't add too much. I definitely cannot back Randy Brown at the minus 250 that he's at now. Like you mentioned, he's chinny. The fight IQ is not where it needs to be laying that type of juice. I think Wellington is live, though. I think he is. I think he has better than a plus 200 chance to win this fight. So in a fight that I think is close, can't really get a solid read one way or another. That plus 200 definitely stands out. So I think he's live, but I can't back him officially. Like you said, the gas tank is a major concern for me. So the longer the fight plays out, I know it's only a 3-round fight. The longer the fight plays out, it can look like a very bad bet in the second round when his guys gassed and making all type of mistakes on the feet across from Randy Brown. So not a lot of interest. I think his dog will pass in the situation. You give me a free bet, gun in my head, I'm taking the dog. Give me the plus 200. I can't lay minus 250 with Randy Brown.
Yeah, man. And for me, I've tried this with Randy Brown before. I've seen how this story goes with him. I bet him against 40-year-old Trinaldo to get a knockout. He doesn't do it. I bet him against Jerry Gooden, who is like kind of fragile at the UFC level. He's a tough guy, but just like walks onto too many big shots against these guys at 185. Or excuse me, at 170. And it didn't work out, right? It's like, I just can't get a good read on this guy because I think he's supposed to have been able to finish a bunch of these guys on his run, and he didn't. So now he's got a guy who, again, yeah, Randy, you should go out there and finish a guy like this. But are you going to? I don't know. And I think Wellington at 26, probably more likely to be putting more skills together here, especially not having gotten, virtually knocked out 4 months ago. Prodigy, what do you think?
Yeah, I love both of these guys. Randy Brown, New York guy. Wellington, Turman, he's up at Tatsuro MMA in Connecticut. I know he makes a couple of trips to Jersey, Cruz MMA in Harrison, New Jersey. Both of these guys, they've had decent careers. Definitely Randy Brown, much better in the UFC. Both chins pretty weak, but do they have the punching power to put each other out? I'm not 100% sold on that. The plus 200 is a pretty crazy number. I'm going to see if that keeps going out before the fight, and we'll see the Randy Brown money keep coming in. Because Wellington's got some pats in this fight. I'm not going to sit here and say he should be the favorite, but there's a little value on that line, and I'll definitely have a little bit of it when the fight comes around.
I love it. There we go. We got a fight at 170 that none of us have the clearest read on, but we're thinking, a lot of unknowns. So unknowns push it closer to 50-50, not closer to minus 250. Randy Brown off a knockout, off a submission, a submission in name only. My man was hurting for certain. So I think that the next fight at 170 is another compelling matchup because Neil Magny finally doesn't have that height and reach advantage, right? He's at size parity with our guy, Phil Rowe. And Phil Rowe, another guy who I believe has made his home in Florida at Fusion XL. So a bunch of Florida connections on this fight card. Here's another one. And for Phil Rowe, he's a guy who's starting to come into his own a little bit, right? He's taking grappling matches outside the cage. He's trying to get more comfortable. He's always had some power in his hands, but has he been able to take the shots very well? Has he been able to deal with the pressure, the wrestling, the cardio, pacing himself over 15 minutes? He's struggled with some of those things, and he's still getting experience under his belt, right? Neil Magny, very experienced guy, very competent in all positions. But you've seen his ceiling and his limitations, right? And I actually think we've started to see like the writing on the wall for Neil Magny a little while ago. I bet Max Griffin like plus 235, I think it was, against him. I thought Max Griffin won that fight. Maybe I'm a little biased there, but I thought he hurt him real bad. I thought he won the first 2 rounds, kind of gave away round 3, got pile drivered on his head like a fool. Just Max Griffin things, but it was also like a fight where, he came out there and blasted him in the first round, almost put Neil Magny away. Neil Magny's durability has been starting to get tested, and when he's been going against these bigger, taller, longer guys, that clinch stuff doesn't work because he's easier to take down. And, we're seeing Shavkat, a bunch of other guys, obviously very talented guys, but just easily like kick his feet out from under him, dominate him from on top, and finish him. And so I think that, this is not going to be as clinical and easy for somebody like Phil Rowe. I don't think he's as consistent with the wrestling. I don't think his hips are as good, but he's got a lot of the physicality, a lot of the intangible gifts to make it more hard for Magny to dominate him in the clinch. It's just hard to move around somebody who's physically the same size as you and who can create the same points of leverage. Add to that, he's the younger fellow here. Probably hits a little bit harder than Neil Magny. Neil Magny got his first finish in 10 years against Daniel Rodrigues. By the way, bet the ITD there because it was like plus 680. But now we're not even talking about that. I think that Neil Magny and Phil Rowe could finish this fight. But I just think Phil Rowe's a little more likely to do so. I think he's a little bit more aggressive with his grappling game. I think he's a little bit more powerful on the feet. So for me, I think Neil Magny's got a better process. He probably wins this if it goes to decision, but kind of like the upside on the underdog here in Phil Rowe. So give me the Fresh Prince, reluctantly so. What do you think, Prodigy?
Yeah, Magny likes to move forward, use his jab, try to force the clinch on these guys. He subbed D-Rod in round 3 with an arm triangle, almost 10-8'd Griffin in round 3. If you can put Magny on the back foot or take him down, you can easily beat this guy. But it's a very winnable fight, but those are the two things you got to do. He's weak to leg kicks, and he got dropped by Max Griffin. That was a huge drop. I don't know how he survived that, honestly. But other than that, he's only been KO'd by Lorenz Larkin and Ponzinibbio. You know, he got dropped twice by Gastelum, but survived that. He's getting up there in age. I think he's 36 now. But the durability is held. Surviving that Max Griffin drop was a little impressive to me. Rowe's takedown defense is honestly garbage. He's been taken down in every UFC fight and his Contender Series fight. Gabe Green, Kosi, and Witt were all able to take him down multiple times. One of his biggest problems he has is getting held against the cage and not finding a way to get his back off of it. He logged significant minutes just getting held on the cage. You know, not much offense coming back, not much offense going on him. But if Magny puts you on the cage, he's going to wear you down and he is going to land some volume. A lot of Magny's strengths play right into Phil Rowe's weaknesses. I think this is a great stylistic fight for him. He can push a pace, force his way into the clinch, and really wear on Rowe. My biggest concern, obviously, is him getting just one-shot KO'd, or at distance, Rowe starts to pick him apart. But I think Magny's good up to minus 200 here on the money line. I think there's a lot of value at minus 170, minus 165. And I really like his round 3 decision at minus 108. I'll definitely have a lot of that.
Fair play, my man. I get where you're coming from here. But I'm just ever so slightly leaning towards Orlando's own Philip Rowe to get the job done. What do you think? Break the tie for us. Finesse, what do you got?
Yeah, another fight that I'm not really loving. It should be a great fight, but from a betting perspective, haven't gotten there yet on anything officially. You guys kind of broke the fighters and their experience down pretty well, so I'll just kind of break down where I'm looking at it from a betting perspective. I think, like you guys said, I think these guys are similar in a lot of ways. It's sort of a mirror matchup. But like Prodigy was saying, the things that Magny does well, I think plays right into, that's what makes it a good stylistic matchup. For Magny, it plays right into Rowe's weaknesses. So I'm hesitant to lay the minus 170 on Rowe. On Magny, even though I do think that's a side. I've seen Rowe lay on his back for way too long and stay against the cage way too long, like Prodigy was saying. But at some points, I've seen his get-up game be relatively decent. So Neil Magny's a problem. I mean, the guys that he's lost to is a who's who. Gilbert Burns is a savage. Rachmanov is a savage. Michael Chiesa, Dos Anjos, Damian Maia. And look at the wins on his record, too. You guys mentioned D-Rod, Jeff Neal, Robbie Lawler, Leach. So way more experience, like I think Liam was talking about. I think, Dad said it in the comments, I think Neil has a really good chance to drown him and remind people who must have fucking forgot who Neil Magny is. So too close right now, in my opinion, to make any moves betting wise. I definitely lean to the Jeff Neal side. Like I said, I think it's a statement performance one way or another, whether he looks dominant in the grappling and racks up the control time. He's definitely going to get hit on the feet. Magny's going to get hit on the feet. He's going to have to walk through some stuff. It's just I'm just not absolutely loving the price. So might get there on something. Might change my mind and laying that price. That's where I would lean to the Magny side, but nothing official yet.
I feel you, man. And it's funny. I mentioned earlier this week as well on my first look that I consider shark versus fish the best opportunity to cash on a sub prop, right? You got one guy who just gives up subs. He just can't help himself but gets subbed on the mat. And then you got another guy who's an absolute shark. And I said, my problem is Neil Magny is my quintessential fish. He's my favorite guy to fade with an absolute shark, like a Gilbert Burns. I said to bet his sub prop, like Shavkat Rachmanov sub plus 420. You'll never see it again. Never, ever, ever again. somebody that good against Neil Magny at that price. Never again. FanDuel changed my ability to bet on sub props because of that, right? It's like the thing is, when you look at a fight like this, Philip Rowe is just not a shark, right? That's just, no one would describe him that way. He's more of a guy who storms back in a fight and things like that. Maybe he gives up the first round and comes back in round 2. And Neil Magny's not a guy you want to let get off the starting blocks because he kind of just starts going downhill on you, and making you more frustrated. So for me, we got to see some growth from Phil Rowe for him to win this fight, but he is a younger guy. He does need to put it all together now. He's like 32, and he's starting to get some experience, but could be a little bit too much too soon. And I also pointed out, I think Neil Magny is 8-3, if my memory serves. If I'm wrong, it's 11-3. But the way my brain works, I literally can't think in numbers except if they add up together. But I believe Neil Magny has just an insane record in decisions. And also he's been producing as a favorite. So Neil Magny as a favorite, a lot of support in the market as well. Seems like he's the sharper side here, but got to give you what my gut says. And my gut was a little bit towards the Phil Rowe side. So for me, it's a pass for now. Next up, we've got the main card kicking off. So guys, I have to ask the 62 people rocking with us live, go ahead and drop a like on the video if you have not already. Get subscribed to the channel and make sure that you support my 2 great guests. All their information is in the description box below, but you can find them on Twitter at the handles that you see in front of you. So make sure that you show some love. That being said, guys, Brendan Allen is taking on Bruno Silva at 185 pounds, and that's kicking off the main card on ABC. Oh boy, Brendan Allen is a guy that I have gotten wrong so consistently throughout his UFC run. I was very high on Andre Muniz overall. I thought that his cardio was a little bit of a concern, but I just thought this guy was world-class on the mat. I thought he was going to beat Jacare Souza. I thought he was going to submit him, right? So I kind of had a good beat on him for a while, and I wrote it too long, right? He gets in the Brendan Allen fight. It ended up being a higher pressure situation than he thought, right? Gets moved to a main event. If you guys remember, that was like the day before the event. They're like, yeah, you guys are the main event. Surprise. I think they still had it labeled a different event right up until the night that it went down. So crazy circumstances there. Becomes fight night Allen versus Muniz. He gets the big win, and he's supposed to fight Jack Hermanson. Boy, that seemed like a great opportunity for our guy Brendan Allen to slide into the rankings, maybe pick off one of the weaker links. I think Jack Hermanson's a tough guy, but also we've seen his limitations in the division. That was a winnable fight for him. He loses it, and now he's got a very difficult fight, right? Where Bruno Silva, he's not a guy who's very easy to put away on the ground. He's been taken down a number of times. He's been audited by guys who really like to wrestle, like an Andrew Sanchez, but he's just dangerous to come back on you at any point. He carries his power late into the fight. He's got bricks for hands. That seems like a disaster against somebody like Brendan Allen, who his only problem has been his ability to take damage at the UFC level, right? Other than that, he's been pretty good. But his decision-making, his getting him too emotional, and his inability to take shots has been his problem. I mean, guys, how many people are knocking out, is Sean Strickland knocking out? Even fights like Uriah Hall, where he's got the guy as good as finished, he won't finish them on purpose. The only guy that went down to Sean Strickland in the last 5 years is Brendan Allen, all right? On top of that, we've got him going down to Chris Curtis. He's talking to Sean Strickland outside the cage. The guy doesn't always make plus EV decisions. But then you look, and he's a short favorite here, and it seems like there's a lot of love on Bruno Silva, and he's got a clear path to win by knockout. But I think that Brendan Allen is just a more well-rounded guy. I think Bruno Silva's got a good, pedigree and all this stuff. He's fought good guys, but sometimes it takes him till round 4 and 5 to make the comeback on somebody. And if the fight had been 3 rounds, the fight's over, and he lost because he's getting taken down easily. He's getting thrown around on the mat. He's giving up bad positions at times. Sometimes he looks frustrated. He's talking to his corner. He's like, why is this happening? But then he just can change a fight on a dime. So don't want to go lay 65% against a guy like Bruno Silva, in my humble opinion, right? You see, he's the only guy to go 15 minutes with Alex Pereira, besides Izzy, who got finished at the 24th minute, right? So nobody has gone 15 minutes with Alex Pereira, but this guy, he's typically very durable. He gets finished by GM3. I'm going to actually just wash my hands of that fight because I've rewatched it. He doesn't look like himself at all. He got beat up that whole time. I thought people were sleeping on GM3, but that was GM3, literally just styling on somebody. Every shot he wants, he's picking his shots. I don't think Bruno Silva will ever look like that again. I've never seen that guy before. I've never seen him since. So for me, it's a weird fight. I could see Bruno winning this by knockout, but I think that's kind of his win condition here. I would be surprised if he submitted Brendan Allen. I would be surprised if he outworked him over 15 minutes. So for me, Brendan Allen's got more paths to win, but he's a bonehead. And he sometimes makes not 65% implied win probability decisions. So for me, I'm going to let this one go. I lean towards the fight doesn't go the distance, so pretty strongly here. I don't think Brendan Allen's going to have to drag this out 15 minutes. If he gets him to the ground, he exerts a lot of pressure from on top. We've seen even good grapplers get to good positions on Brendan Allen, then he outpaces them and they give up. It's happened to Muniz, it's happened to Kevin Holland, it's happened to a couple guys where they tried to put that pace on him, and then they were like, oh God, I ran out first. And then he takes their back and finishes them. So he's a big guy at 185. I think both these guys, big guys, and I think Bruno Silva's used to being way bigger than his opponents. I don't think that's going to be the case against Brendan Allen. So going to pick Brendan Allen, but I'm reluctant in doing so. I've been wrong about the guy. Every time I think he's going to win, he loses. Every time I think he's going to lose, he wins. So he's just one of those anomalies for me. Finesse, we'll kick it to you, my man. Do you have anything you're interested in here?
Yeah, I definitely do. I think this is going to be a great fight. Like you said, super dangerous selection of fight, especially outside of the rankings for Allen, especially the fight that he was about to get. Like you talked about, Silva, I mean, decent technical striker, decent, but the massive power. I mean, fight-ending, fight-changing power in the weight division. A lot of experience, right? 31 pro fights, 20 knockouts. And that was the biggest thing for me, right? Is why I take this fight. Coming off the huge win versus Muniz, like you mentioned, had the main event slot versus Hermanson, which, like you also mentioned, I think is a winnable fight. I think we would have got a close line. I think there would have been value on Allen in that fight as well. Probably would have vaulted him maybe top 5, top 7 in the division, and then your path to the belt becomes a lot more clearer. Now taking on a fight, like we said, with an extremely dangerous, unranked guy. And that's, part of that reason. Allen's not dumb. He may have dumb decisions inside the cage, which we've seen, like you mentioned, but he's at a good camp and they're not dumb. Part of the reason for taking this fight has to be the matchup. They have to love the matchup. He looked up to and now trains with GM3, like you mentioned. Similar style to GM3. I think he's just better than GM3 is. I think he's a better striker than he is. Obviously younger than GM3. It's just a good matchup for Allen. Silva has struggled in almost all of his fights with guys that can wrestle. Sanchez absolutely dominated him on the ground. Turman took his back multiple times and dominated the wrestling in that fight. Allen is elite on a mat. Really good BJJ and will be able to strike with, be able to take Silva down. Silva has had a really good get-up game at times in his fights. I forgot which fight that was where he was getting fucking dominated, and then just
Andrew Sanchez. He gave that fight away, dude. Andrew Sanchez is just a complete third-round immolation waiting to happen every time.
And he destroyed him with that ground and pounder, just absolutely changed the fight and then the fight. So that is live at any point, right? In a 3-round fight, all 15 minutes. Allen has to be smart, and that's literally in my notes because of the bonehead shit that you were talking about that he makes, the decisions that he makes. So like I said, Silva has a decent get-up game, but Allen can with the wrestling and with the grappling can control big chunks of this fight. So if it does go to decision, I think he can at least take 2 rounds, if not 30-27. This guy, there's always the chance that he dominates the round. 2-3 minutes of control time. Silva finds that get up, rocks him late in the round, kind of steals that round. We've seen the judging and what these judges value at certain points. It's more moments and damage rather than I guess trying to actually judge the fight. I think he can use his intelligence on the ground, the slick transitions, the BJJ to control a large majority of this fight, big sections of this fight, and maybe and possibly sub Silva. We've seen Silva sub 6 times in his career. I know that was a little bit earlier, and it's been a little while since we've seen that. And Allen, like you mentioned, well-rounded. He is not a slouch on the feet. Great kicks to the legs, to the body, to the head. And I think he can use those to kind of keep Silva off of him at times. And when he's hurt, he can hopefully use that as well. You mentioned the Curtis fight. And that's a fight where, I don't think, mentally, I think I've seen that kind of maturity, both mentally in his striking, in his gas tank as well, as he's fought more. So, like you said, talking to Strickland in the corner, really got torn up. Curtis really torn up the body, which tore up Allen's body, which led to the finish. Devastating body shot, and then a hook to rock him and finish him. So he has to stay smart, stay off the fence, try to control him, use the wrestling. I think he's gotten better with that. In the Chris Curtis fight, I don't think they scored a takedown for Allen, but Allen definitely took him down, kind of caught his foot and took him down. And they just, I think for some reason, ain't scored a takedown. So I think he can, if he wants to, if he decides to, get the wrestling going, be consistent with the wrestling. I think he could hold his own on his feet. You have to stay out the pocket, stay away from being right in front of this guy because as we mentioned, devastating striker. He's 10-2 in the UFC. He's entering his prime, if not in his prime already. And I think we continue to see that evolution. He picked a dangerous fight, a tougher road. I think he could have waited and maybe got that fight or gotten a bigger fight. He's taking a tough road, but I think he knows the matchup. I think the matchup works in his favor. The price, I think just a couple of days ago was a lot nicer than it is now. I'm seeing minus 180s, minus 190. So they're definitely making you, again, pay that price to back Allen. But I think Allen was his fight. So I'm going to find a way to back him. I don't really mind laying that type of juice in certain very particular in certain situations. I think this is a situation where I wouldn't mind doing that. So I think Allen wins the fight. I'll back Allen in some form of fashion. I want to see if the line continues to move or moves away from Allen. But I like Allen to win this fight.
I like it, man. Very thorough breakdown. And we got my guy Mark says Silva doesn't go to the body as much. That was another thing that I thought of as well. Silva is a pretty classic headhunter because he's got so much power. He's like, man, if I just do this once, it'll be a wrap. But I think that to your point, Gerald Meerschaert, I think part of the reason why he had so much success there, he goes to the body frequently. He's a very underrated kicker. He throws a lot of kicks and it's slow, pendulum-like, but it lands with a lot of impact and it slows guys down. So you normally see a guy will start hot on Gerald Meerschaert, but if he doesn't put him away, then Gerald starts to take back over because he does a lot of things that sap people late. Brendan Allen throws a lot of body kicks, and you look at Punahele Soriano, he's out there throwing everything with a lot of power. And by the end of that fight, he's like, I can't believe, he just took so many clean body shots. And I think that that also made him really susceptible his next fight. He got brutalized there too. So I think when you look at a guy like this, he's going to try and set the table for himself. He doesn't always fight smart. That's the problem. Prodigy, what do you think, my man? Does Bruno Silva shock the world again, or does Brendan Allen keep the ball rolling? I think part of the question we have to ask is, does he have the animal on his head? Because if he shows up at weigh-ins with the animal on his head, it's going to change my calculus completely.
This might be my favorite fight on the card. I've had pretty good success with both of these guys, both good action fighters. It's pretty funny they set this up. They're both kind of each other's kryptonite. 6 of 7 losses for Silva are by sub. Allen's last 2 L's are by KO against Strickland and Curtis. I mean, if you're getting knocked out by Sean Strickland, that's a bit of a problem. But then again, I don't know what happened in the GM3 fight for Bruno Silva. I think he might have came in with a terminal illness or something there. You can't convince me the same guy that fought Alex Pereira was the same guy who fought Gerald Meerschaert. I refuse.
He sent in his body
that.
double.
100%. Came out with the mustache and everything. I don't know what was going on. But to keep it short, you guys broke it down great. I think the under 2.5 is a great line here. Minus 186, definitely some juice, but I think it's well worth the squeeze. I think this finishes 75-80% clip, and I'll definitely have a lot of that under 2.5.
I like it. And the last thing I will note about the Strickland fight, Strickland has, he started at 170, right? But then at 185, he's been pretty big for 185 in his recent performance. He's kind of just been growing into his body. Then you see him at 195 in that Brendan Allen fight. That's the best he's ever looked, right? He goes out there and absolutely clinics him. But then you look at the fight at 205 against Nasruddin Imavov. He looked excellent in that fight, blew me away. I thought Imavov was going to be competitive there. It wasn't at all. So again, I think Strickland up a weight, maybe a mythical creature. Maybe we got to start thinking about this. Sean Strickland, his future could be at 205. I kid a little bit, but you know what I'm saying? Like, this guy has just been doing well up in weight. Maybe not cutting weight leaves a little bit more power on his shots, because he hasn't been a prolific finisher otherwise. But we can move along here.
One more thing, if you don't mind. So
no, please go ahead.
I'm reading the chat, right? Sharpest chat in the game, right? So Mark brought up Allen always loses the breakout fights. I think he wins this one, right? I did see something like that on Twitter. I think he's had like 3 or 4 fights pull out against ranked opponents and then has 4 unranked opponents and has done very bad in those matchups. So I wanted to point that out too. And then Dad says Allen has to be smart. Words you don't want to hear holding a Allen ticket. And I 100% agree. I felt that right here in my chest. So that's a big point in this fight. If he fights smart, uses the game plan, and training where he's training now with GM3, I think he does. He might look like a minus 300 favorite. So just a couple things I wanted to put out from guys in the chat.
I love it. I love it. And the last things that I'll point out here as we close the book on this one, Florida connection for Brendan Allen. He trains at Killcliff. He's from Louisiana, but been training down in Florida for quite some time. So has a little bit of that connection. And the other thing I'll mention, which ties into our next fight, is Evolução Tai. Is where Bruno Silva represents in Brazil. And so does his teammate, Gabriel Santos. He's taking on David Onama at featherweight, 145 pounds. David Onama back here as a plus 145 underdog. So complete reversal of fortunes, right? He was a big favorite, drops the ball there. James Krause effect, you know what I'm saying? Then all of a sudden, my guy's back. He's a plus 185 dog. But we did see in the last fight, Santos had an argument for winning against a tested guy, a known UFC quantity in Lerone Murphy, did it on short notice, did it overseas, like just checked a lot of boxes for you as, man, this guy's got real talent. He's clearly good on the ground. And he trains at a gym where he's getting good work on the feet as well. So I think he's got a lot to offer. That being said, he's absorbing 6 shots, per minute on the comeback in his last fight. That could be a danger, when you're going against a guy like David Onama. I don't think he's the cleanest guy. I don't think he's the most technical guy. I think he's still a work in progress. Training over at Factory X, they're not known for getting up off the bottom perfectly. They content with playing off the back a little bit. Some concerns that I have. But he does have real natural power and just absolutely blasted Benitez out of there. Benitez is a better fighter, skill for skill. It didn't matter. It was about who was more durable, who could land harder, and who was faster. And that's what he made it about. So Onama will give himself a chance to win a lot of fights. And Santos isn't a guy who's prioritizing his defense standing. So I think Onama is a live underdog here. But I think that skills more often than not win fights, right? And so I do think that if this fight gets extended, Santos is probably going to be better conditioned, have more paths to victory. Takedowns can bail you out. When fights start to get greasy, when both guys start to get tired, if you're the guy who can get on top and stay there, it can be a difference maker. I think that that's what Santos has in his back pocket. I think that's why he's favored to win this fight. But I don't feel comfortable going to lay 70% against a guy who in his last fight was a 75% favorite against a guy who's like pseudo ranked, a top 20 guy in the featherweight division. I just think that this is not linear pricing. It doesn't make sense to me. So can't get on board with the big favorite price, but I also see that they're, keeping the submission prop here 2.5 to 1 and below because the ground game is going to favor Santos. If he can extend ground exchanges, he's going to be much more skilled, but that's hard to do against big physical athletes that can freak their way up to the feet. Onama might just go, get off me and just stand back up. We talked about it before. Trevor Peek, he didn't do jiu-jitsu class every week, right? Or he didn't, but now he just knows how to get up to his feet because he's an ornery prick. We talk about in wrestling, bottom is an attitude, right? Like bottom position is about saying, you're not going to hold me down. Justin Gaethje has pretty controversial themes about this, right? But it's like there's a idea of I'm just not going to accept being held down on bottom. I think while Onama's fresh, that could be the case. But as the fight gets extended, I think that's where he could be more vulnerable. So Prodigy, we'll kick it to you first, my man. Very fun fight here at 145. I'm expecting a wild barn burner type of scrap, and I think the UFC is as well. They're bringing this fight to ABC.
Yeah, I love both of these guys. Pretty well versed with both of them. I took Nate Landwehr against Onama, big underdog. Love to cash that ticket. And I had Santos against Lerone Murphy. Did not cash that ticket, but it went well, I would say. I think this price is crazy. This price isn't as crazy as the opener with David Onama at minus 275. But then it flipped to David Onama plus 285. I don't think the books know how to line this fight. I still think the market's wrong on it. Onama, yeah, he's got a cardio problem. But he still fights harder in that third round. He dropped Nate Landwehr with like 10 seconds left, and he was getting his ass kicked for half of that fight. I think he blew his load in those first 2 minutes trying to finish Landwehr, and his cardio is it's definitely an issue, but it's being a little overblown. Santos had one of the performances of his career against Lerone Murphy, who's another guy I think might be a little overhyped, and he probably should have got the nod, but he didn't. People are playing him off the loss, expecting a huge performance here, minus 225, whatever, against David Onama, who's perennially been a big favorite. So I'm not so sure about this price. I'll definitely have some plus money Onama tickets. I've been playing him since he was a bigger dog, and I definitely like this price a bunch on the underdog.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I think you hit a lot of these points, but let's just talk from a theoretical standpoint. He was plus 350 against Mason Jones, loses a close, decision where he lost, right? Nobody would argue that, but it was close. It was competitive, probably looked way closer than plus 350, which is why he's favored against Gabriel Benitez, gets the KO win in round one, favored to the tune of minus 750 against Garrett Armfield, hit the sub prop there at plus 500. That was nice. Got me my money back off that Gabriel Benitez donation, but now I'm at break even, right? I didn't bet on the Landwehr opportunity. I think that was the time to fade David Onama, right? Plus 250 on a guy who's proven to go 5 hard rounds in Russia. Okay, no problem. I understood why people would take that shot. But I just saw in my mind, I'm like, man, Nate Landwehr's getting killed by, much lower level guys with less power. He almost got killed. He fought his way through. He's a tough bastard and did the damn thing. He proved that he was worthy, right? But now we're flipping it all on its head, right? A complete inversion of the line. We're back to, almost that plus 350 territory, like he's going up a weight class against Mason Jones. So I can't really understand the dynamic pricing here. And minus 275 to plus 185 is like a rare flip in MMA. You see lines flip, but I think that's a massive correction, the likes of which we rarely see. Finesse, what do you got here, brother?
Yeah, Dixon in the chat says Krause has Onama by KO, so that's definitely the side. That's definitely the sharp side. So keep that in mind. Yeah,
$1 million later.
Yeah. So that's another moneymaker right there. I looked at this fight earlier in the week and saw the line and saw who the fuck it was, and I pretty much knew it was going to be a pass for me there. I think it's dog a pass. The huge line movement, like you guys talked about, that's a bunch of things. Sorry about that. That's a bunch of things. That's public money. That's sharp money. That's respected bettors putting a lot of fucking money on Santos. So if Santos was the big dog, I say Santos is a side. Onama's the big dog now, so I think it's a dog a pass situation. I worry a bit about Onama's gas tank, but yeah, I just don't have. I think you guys did a way better job than I can, kind of breaking these guys in this fight down and the matchup. So I'm gonna just leave that to you guys. Complete pass for me.
Fair play. And the last thing I'll leave you guys with on this fight is just from Narrative Nation standpoint. I don't think the UFC's been doing anybody that was related to the Krause gym any favors. Okay. I think they've been trying to just like match them up tough and get them out of the UFC as fast as possible. That's a personal opinion. But for me, the line movement and everything else in this fight with who it is, I have no reason to believe he's connected to Krause in any way. I just don't want to find out. I'm not going to. So I'll tell you what, you go back and listen to the cornering in those fights and tell me nothing sketchy was going on. The FBI is going back and listening to that corner. I'll tell you what. So just best of luck, anybody on this one. For me, it's a dogger pass situation, but the line movement is enough for me to probably let that one go. Next up, guys, we've got a heavyweight feature bout, and we've got Justin Badman Tafa taking on Austin Lane. Justin Tafa, fresh off cashing me a very nice correlated parlay. One of the things I've been targeting this year, correlated parlays. My guy, Justin Tafa, when he's going to get the job done against a guy like Parker Porter, he's going to put him in a box, right? Parker Porter is a little bit slow. He's one of our guys, right? East Coast, Beast Coast. My guy got in shape for the last fight, went out there, got the win over Braxton Smith. God bless him for it, right? Showed some real heart. But Parker Porter is just a little bit slow and stagnant, right? He's not a very dynamic heavyweight. You put him in there with a young guy who's moving around him a little bit. It's got real power. That's a tough matchup for him, right? He's probably not taking down that guy because he's not super athletic. Parker has struggled to take down guys who are really bad at wrestling at times in the UFC. So he's just a guy that he's got a fun skill set to go out there and put on an honest fight, but he's a working man's fighter, okay? I do think that we're dealing with something different in Austin Lane, right? If you were to just assemble all the UFC heavyweights on the roster, Austin Lane is probably going to be in the top 15 athletes, no doubt, probably in the top 10, maybe in the top 5. But then the question is just how does it translate to MMA? Because it's not just an athlete contest, right? We're not doing a combine. If we're doing a combine, this fight's over already, right? Austin Lane is winning by a landslide. I think Tafa's a more comfortable fighter, but I think the athleticism goal is big. As a matter of fact, I think Lane, former Jacksonville Jaguar, Narrative Nation hats, put him on. Next up, he's training in Jacksonville, right? One of the only guys, we got people all over Florida. Y'all do some geography, okay? We're talking about Florida here and Florida there, 6 hours, right? It's like Buffalo to New York City. We're talking about 2 different parts of the state, 2 different parts of the, geography. It's a different culture. Miami, it's not the same, right? It's South Florida versus North Florida for Jacksonville. So just a different dynamic. This guy played in Jacksonville, drafted in Jacksonville. You think the UFC wants to set him up for failure? No, they're giving him a guy who's on a little bit of a lower level, who could definitely knock him out in the first round. That's how he loses fights. But also, Austin Lane could knock this guy out. Tafa's been knocked out by Jorgen de Castro. He was a math teacher, okay? Imagine you took an NFL player versus your average math teacher. I mean, Jesus Christ, guys. Like, we have to have some honesty in this conversation, all right? At the end of the day, you got a plus 150 number next to an NFL player against a guy who, if he was selling you auto parts, you'd be like, oh, cool. Like, you wouldn't be surprised. Like, he's just a guy. Like, I don't even think he's the most talented guy in his family, right? Like, the other Tafa is probably a little more impressive. So, I don't think this is a 0%, nothing like that. But at plus 150, I'm taking Austin Lane, or I'm passing on this fight 100%. I think you look at the fact that Sharp Books came out, Austin Lane plus 700 to win the fight by submission. What does that tell you? It tells you that he is a former tackler of people, of men. He could tackle this guy who's not very athletic and potentially submit him just based on the fact that he can try and do that, right? Like, who was to get a takedown in this fight? Not Tafa. Tafa's going to try and go and swang him back. He's gone to decision with the worst guys in the UFC. So I just think overall, I'm never laying a minus 180 on Tafa. He could knock this guy out in the first round and make me look like a fool, and that'd be just fine. Because Austin Lane, that's how he loses. But if he wins this fight at plus 150, I think people are going to be kicking themselves for betting on a guy whose only chance to win most fights is knockout or very close split decision. He's going to split decisions with Carlos Boy Felipe, another guy who, again, if he sold you auto parts, you would not be like, bro, were you in the UFC? Like, we're talking about different kind of people. So I like Austin Lane here. I'll kick it to my guy, Finesse. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree on most of what you said, but I think Tafa's gonna knock Lane the fuck out. I'm not betting it. I'm not gonna bet it. I'm never gonna take Justin Tafa as a minus 200 favorite ever in my life, ever. I don't care who he fights. He could be in there with me, and I'm not betting Tafa at minus 200 on any card of mine. So, and everything is just unplayable, right? To Tafa by KO is minus 120. Tafa by KO in round one is plus 130. So I'm not interested at all at any of those prices. So I guess his dog or pass, but I mean, Lane got knocked, and this was what, like 5 years ago? Lane got knocked. Lane got knocked the fuck out by Greg Hardy on the Contender. And then right after that gets knocked the fuck out by a guy named Frank Tate. You guys may know who that is. I don't know who that is. In a promotion called Square Ring. And then gets knocked the fuck out by Vernon Lewis in the LFA. He's an athlete for sure. He's definitely an athlete, going to be the better athlete. Very awkward striking. If he gets the takedowns going, which I haven't really seen him do consistently in any of the tape that I've watched. I haven't watched all of his fights, but I watched a good majority of them. He's not a guy that's going to come out and, maybe he might prove me wrong, but I don't think he's going to come out and just try to wrestle fuck him the whole fight. And I think that's what he needs to do. Even if he gets a takedown, I think, you control maybe a good majority of that round, win the round. But Tafa has a really good chance to catch him coming in too for one of those takedowns. He's not the most technical guy in the world. He fights like a football player. That's how he fights. So that's going to come with some power. It's going to come with some physicality, which is going to win him fights and has won him fights. But I think Tafa knocks him the fuck out. There's just no value in that anywhere. So it's going to have to be a pass for me. Tafa's a plus 200 fight for me, a plus 200 bet on for me, not a minus 201. So pass for me.
Yeah, man. And just like the last time out, the correlated parlay was, I think, plus 200 or so for him to win in under 2.5 rounds against Parker Porter. Yeah, I'll take that kind of run out. When he's slightly favored and you give me what I think is his most likely conditions to win, for a plus number, I'm all for it. But again, like you mentioned, even the KO in round one, which you think is like the most likely outcome, it's plus 130. I mean, it's just disgusting numbers. And it correlates a little bit with heavyweight MMA, but still there's 0% chance you're getting value on that number. Even if it hits, we're talking about probabilities and prices, and just doesn't seem plus EV to me. Prodigy, what do you think, my man?
Yeah, the UFC should be ashamed of themselves putting this on the main card of a good fight. Everything was good until this shit. We spent too much time on it already. And justice for Parker Porter. That's all I got.
I love it. I love it. Maybe justice is served here, but I think the crowd's going to be going crazy for Austin Lane. I think that Austin Lane's going to have the length. You know, I would not be surprised if he landed a head kick. Tafa sometimes likes to engage at that long distance and go for his own head kicks. And I think Lane just has the length, the size to maybe capitalize on his own. But I agree with you guys. He doesn't look very comfortable when he's fighting. He could easily get knocked out here, but I do think all the upside here is on the underdog. You know, over plus 200 to win inside the distance against a guy who has been flatlined by a math teacher. I mean, we'll just find out. But Austin Lane for me would be the play. Next up, guys, we got the co-main event of the evening. Amanda Ribas taking on Maycee, the future Barber. And this is a fight that I was taping today. Oh boy, it's a greasy one because on the one hand, my girl Amanda Ribas, you know, I thought that she probably beat Katlyn Chookagian when I watched it on the night. I had a big position on her. I was watching through green colored glasses. You know, I rewatched it today. It's a close fight. You know, I get why Katlyn won the fight. It came down to just who landed a little bit more effectively with the boxing on the feet, and Katlyn was longer. She was able to hit her from further away. Amanda doesn't have good defense at all, you know, and that's the one thing that has stayed true from 115 to 125. I think she takes the shots a touch better at 125, but I don't like, you know, the way that she strikes. She's doing a lot of this, like just like hands just never in a defensive position and firing out from there. It's always just all over the place, where I get if you want to be here and feint, that's different than going and flailing. You know, she's just a lot of times in very aloof positions. And when she gets hit, it looks like she didn't see it coming at all. So that's a problem against Maycee Barber, who has a rare skill in WMMA, which is that she can actually hit people in a way that they don't like. Right. And so many times in WMMA, you could land 100 times. There's nobody's in any danger of calling it off. Right. I don't think that's the case here. I do think Amanda Ribas could get hurt in this fight if it stays on the feet. I don't think she'll like to get bullied in the clinch if it gets there. Maycee is just awkward in the clinch. She's throwing elbows from very close range. She's pushing on your throat, punching you in the face. She's tricky from there. That's where she gets her finishes. Standing TKOs along the fence line, can't move side to side. I start to beat you up. A lot of times, Ribas does well when she can come forward on somebody, when she can mix in her takedowns, when she's not afraid of you trying to hit her back hard. But when she's not expecting it, she gets hit hard, clean, and reacts terribly. Has at 115 and she has at 125. So I think that the last fight was very impressive. I thought she was going to win that one. I thought she had the better cardio, the better gas tank. I thought Vivi would have to knock her out to win the fight, and that was what it ended up being. Maycee Barber gets taken down a little too easy. Her ground game, still a work in progress, you know, made some bad decisions against Andrea Lee. But I also tweeted this out earlier. She won a round off of her back, you know, not the whole round. She spent about 2 minutes on her back in that first round, but she trapped the arm behind the back and she elbowed the girl in the face as many times as she could, and she hurt her. Amanda Ribas lost the fight against Katlyn Chookagian, not from a lack of control, from a lack of doing shit with it, from a lack of doing anything that the judges give a flying shit about. She doesn't hit anybody with purpose that hurts them. She doesn't take people down and finish them very often. So most of the time, she just gets to good positions and then hopes she wins. And I think she's a very good fighter. I think she's got good skills, but I think at 115, she could leverage a lot of that size and physicality in ways she can't at 125. And she beat Paige Van Zandt, who stinks, no offense, but just not very good at the UFC level, especially at the upper echelon. She got beat up a few times when she took steps up. She got beat up in bare knuckle many times, right? So that's her big win at 125. She beat Vivi in her last one. That was a good win. She lost to Katlyn. Okay, that's a justifiable loss. I haven't been blown away by her performances at 125. I felt like she was much more dynamic at 115, but she can't take the shots coming back. So she's just in a little bit of a rock and a hard place. I don't think she knows exactly what she wants to do with her offense. And I think Maycee Barber is an extremely live underdog this weekend. Plus 170. She hits very hard. She's normally a minus 300 favorite in her fights. So I think Maycee's a live underdog here. I think the KO at plus 450 is a little bit live as well. My guy Dixon in the chat says Ribas is a glass cannon, kind of like Johnny Walker. Yo, I think she's such a nice girl and she's smiley, bubbly. There's so much to like about her. But at the end of the day, it's a cage fight. I don't give a shit, right? We're talking about money. Maycee Barber fights like she's a caged animal, right? She fights very mean. Amanda Ribas is like smiling, help you up after. Like, we're talking about two different girls. One will stab you, shank you in a prison fight or something, right? So I'm going to take that girl at plus 170 personally. Prodigy, do you think that we got something here, a live dog, or do you think the ground game from Ribas is going to be just too much?
So a lot of people are saying that Gillian Robertson versus Ricci is the sim fight of the week. For me, it's this one. I I've had good history with both of these girls. You said the green-colored goggles got you on that Chuk fight. I had Chukagian that night. I thought she lost that night. I still think she lost rewatching it. I got
My
away with
9.5
one there.
units at plus 160 are just in tears, bro.
Jesus. But I took Vivi in their fight. I thought she'd be able to touch the chin. She wasn't. I was impressed with Ribas there. Maycee, she's a bit of a junkyard dog though. Wherever she is in the position, she's gonna try to attack you, and she can mix it up. I think she's gonna have the advantage on the feet here. This has all the markings of a greasy split decision. I don't have the DK in front of me. If you guys know what the plus 3.5 is, that definitely seems like it's got some juice. If it's
Minus
a decent
175.
line.
Minus 175.
Minus
Yeah, not
175.
bad.
That's definitely interesting. That might catch a couple dollars from me. I'm definitely looking at the Barber side. I haven't gotten there yet, but it's definitely looking that way.
I mean, and to your point, we're looking at Barber by decision. If you think this is a close decision type fight, I mean, it's plus 400. How often do you see one side in a WMMA fight favored to go to decision, and the side is plus 400 to win by decision? It's just a little bit surprising there. So great shout. Finesse, what do you think, man? It seemed like you were grinning ear to ear. Is it a unanimous live underdog?
Yes, it is. I love this is probably going to be one of my biggest bets of the card. I love Maycee in this spot. The future, I think, you guys broke it down perfectly. For all the reasons that you guys said, right? Whether it's a split decision, right? Maycee's the king, the queen of split decisions. Whether it's a close fight, whether it's not a close fight, however the fight goes, and then you look at Barber being plus 170, plus 180. You take that bet every single day, right? If it's a close fight and she loses, you live with the result. I think it's a great matchup, right? You guys talked about a lot, right? Amanda Ribas. Anytime she's fought anybody with any type of power, right? Marina Rodrigues is technical on her feet, but she does she can crack. She has some power in her hands. Ribas gets knocked the fuck out. Zhalgas has no distinguishable power, and she got rocked versus Janjaroba, even though that fight went to decision. Pauliana Vieira has some power, got knocked out in that fight. And look at her wins. Her wins do not impress me. You mentioned the Paige Van Zandt fight. She's a OnlyFans model. Mackenzie Dern is not going to threaten you with power on the feet, even though she has been developing some power. Randa Marco is not going to scare you on the feet. And that's really it. Maycee's fought some very, very tough competition. I've been talking with my homies about this fight, and almost every one of them have said, well, Ribas is a threat to, take her down and hold her, right? Like Liam, like you were saying, Barber's very active on bottom. She is a fucking Tasmanian devil. Wherever the fight is, she's gonna fight for your money, even if she's on her back. In that, what's her last fight, Liam? Remind me. You just said her name.
Maycee's last fight you're talking about?
Yeah.
Maycee's last fight was against Andrea Lee.
Andrea Lee, yeah, she took her down 4, 5, 6 times.
5 times.
And she was scrapped. Maycee was scrapping from the bottom, did damage from the bottom. I like to see that, right? If you're in compromising positions, she's going to try to get up. She may not be the best at it. Her get up game is not refined, but she's going to scrap. She's going to try to do damage. Ribas is just so sloppy on the feet, whether it's her actual striking, her striking defense. And Barber carries that rare power in WMMA, like you were saying. Ribas is used to, like you guys were saying, fighting a weight class down. Now she's coming up. Maycee's going to be way bigger, way more physical. Whether it's clinch time against the fence, whether it's her just being in her face the whole fight. The plus 3.5, Prodigy brought it up. I think that's a great look too. If you want to be safer, right? She just has to win a round on all judges' scorecard. I don't mind laying a minus 175 in situations like this. I need a good chance that the fighter is going to win the fight. If I'm going to lay minus 170 on the minus 3.5, I mean the plus 3.5. Yeah, the plus 3.5 for Maycee. There has to be a good chance for me that she's going to win the fight, and I'm picking her to win the fight. So I'm going to take both. I'm going to take the plus 3.5 as a little bit of a safer option, and then kind of hedge the money line as well at this ridiculous price. I just think it's a way disrespectful line. Ribas is chinny as fuck. She's a very marketable girl for the UFC, but I don't think she's going to be able to stack up the wins against good enough competition for them to put a rocket ship on her back. So yeah, I really love Maycee Barber at this price. If it was a pick-em price, or if this was flipped the other way, I'd have more hesitation, even though I still would pick Barber to win the fight. But I absolutely love this price. So give me her to cover the plus 3.5. Give me her to win the fight. Like you said, I liked the sprinkle on the decision, but I think she's very, very live to TKO Ribas. So if you want to sprinkle on that as well, yeah, like I said, probably going to be one of my larger wagers of the evening, and it's going to be on a dog again. I think it's a heavy dog card. And give me another dog. Give me Maycee Barber.
I like it, man. And this is a dog that stood out to me right away. I think that Amanda, good fighter, but I don't know if I love this weight class for her. I think that that's a real big open question. And people are talking about Andrea Lee, if you're getting taken down by her. Andrea Lee is huge. She's physical. She's a lifelong 125-pounder. I just don't think of her as being the same physicality as somebody like Amanda Ribas, who, while being very strong, I think her best skill, and I think it gets slept on, is her counter grappling. Verna Jandidoba, elite grappler, can't get anything going. Mackenzie Dern, elite grappler, can't get anything going. That's why she had so much success in those fights. It's because they're not very good strikers. But against good strikers, she's always struggled. Even against Polyana Viana, who's not a great striker, she's just a girl that's got some power and throws straight. If you throw straight, if you hit hard, that can be a real problem for Amanda Ribas. So I think all the aggression and stuff that she brings on the feet that makes people love her is also the thing that could lead to her downfall. In her last fight with Katlyn Chookagian, she was like, and like yelling and throwing down in the middle. If she does that with Maycee Barber in round 3 here, she might be leaving in a body bag. So I just think Maycee Barber takes over down the stretch here. I think she gets the win, but Amanda Ribas, sub 1. That I think is her best chance. Just hop on the back, get her before she gets you, before you get hurt. Because I do think the longer this fight goes on, the more damage incurs. The one other thing I always like to point out, when you're moving around a fighter who's bigger than you, it's exhausting. You get tired. And I think Viviane Arujau brought a lot of energy out of Amanda Ribas because she's so strong. She's hard to move around physically. I think, with Maycee, she can keep the cardio up into the 3rd round here and exert a lot of that physicality as well. So great fight. Great matchmaking here. We're going to find out if Amanda Ribas is coming or going at 125. But at 145, we have the ultimate crossroads fight here. We're going to find out if Ilia Topuria is coming or going. Another guy, just like our guy Tatsuro Taira on the preliminary card, 13-0. 13-0 for our guy Ilia Topuria, looking for magic number 14. He's taking on Josh Emmett to do so. And Josh Emmett, fresh off of a title challenge, I was devastated, guys. I had Yair Rodrigues plus 350, I think it was, by KO. He absolutely assaulted Josh Emmett from second one till the end. He did get hurt in that fight as well because Yair fights like a gangster, hands down at his sides, not afraid to get hit, but he just crucified him with the kicks to the body. I think that Josh Emmett probably was picking out bone spurs and like just absolute mushing of the ribs. It was brutal. And then on top of that, right, Josh realized, I cannot stay on the feet with this guy anymore. I need to start pursuing takedowns. When he started going for takedowns, he just wasn't the better guy on the ground. He was getting put in a lot of dangerous, threatening positions from round 1 to round 2. And in round 2, he went from one dangerous armbar to a triangle choke that was finished. So I don't think his grappling is all that it's cracked up to be, right? I don't think many people have tested Josh Emmett in the grappling. Comes from a good gym, Team Alpha Male, a lot of good guys there, a lot of good front headlock series, things like that. But I do think that we saw from the full top guard, he's got a very basic game at best. He didn't do a great job with the ground and pound, and he ended up getting submitted and nearly submitted several other times. So I think his ground game is a huge question mark. Why is that a problem? Ilia Topuria is an elite black belt. He's very dangerous on the ground. He's got good choke series from the front headlock. He's also got the ability to take the back. He's got the ability to mix in a variety of other subs. Dangerous fellow. And more than that, he tries to kill you every exchange on the feet. So the danger for Ilia Topuria is Josh Emmett still hits hard. He's still a man. He doesn't want to quit. In that last fight, he could have taken a lot of easy ways out. Yair Rodrigues was like slamming these body kicks that everybody would have been like, yo, no problem if you go down to that. And he kept taking them and kept moving forward and trying. He's a tough guy. He wants it so bad. But for me, here's the problem. Biggest motivation spot of your career, title fight, doesn't go your way. You're 38. You're in the youngest average division. Youngest of all the divisions in the UFC and the men's side of things. Youngest on average. featherweight. It's for a reason. It's a globally competitive weight class. There's a million guys out there that are 145 pounds. It's easy to be there, right? It's an average size around the world. It's just not easy to compete with these guys at 145 as you age out. Josh Emmett pulled off a miraculous win after miraculous win, close decision after close decision, fought perfectly every time, did everything right, scratched his way to a title fight. God bless him for it. It didn't go his way. Is he going to have the same motivation to try and string it all back and do it all over again, fighting the toughest guys from the bottom of the division, slog your way back up? No, I don't think he is. I think that this is going to be a rude wake-up call for Josh Emmett. I think the last fight, he was fighting a guy who was more dynamic, who was a little too fast, who was a little too mobile, who was lighting him up on the feet, and who could take the shots better. Josh Emmett couldn't take the same damage that Yair Rodrigues could take. He got wobbled, and he recovered. Josh Emmett got wobbled. He shot bad takedowns and got submitted. I think that in this fight, the more dangerous guy on the mat is Ilia Topuria. I think the more dangerous guy today on the feet is Ilia Topuria. I think he's going to win this fight. I think he's probably going to do it in the first 2 rounds. And I think that there's a chance it gets longer than that, but Ilia doesn't fight like a guy who's waiting, to get paid by the hour, right? He's a guy who's fighting to get paid by the minute. He's going out there to kill you. And I think that Josh Emmett is going to hurt him. They might get into some crazy exchanges, but what have we seen every time Ilia Topuria has been hurt? He gets back in somebody's face like a madman and kills them. That's what I've seen from him every time it's ever happened to him before. And when he wasn't capable of doing that, he's shooting takedown, and staying relentless and aggressive. He's gone up to 155 and done it. He's done it down at 45 to good guys. I believe in this guy's upside. I think he's going to win this fight, and I think he's going to do it in dominant fashion. You look at how they market these fight nights on ABC. I think they would love nothing more than just like Jailton Almeida on UFC on ABC4. What if this other guy, Ilia Topuria, this Spanish-Georgian sensation, this multiple demographic killer, gets another finish in this 145-pound division? That's an easy guy to market for a title fight, right? That's an easy guy to market for a Max Holloway fight if he beats the zombie, right? It's like I could just see Ilia Topuria being next up in this featherweight division. I think he wins this fight, and I think he does so in dominant fashion. Finesse, I see the head nodding. My man, do you agree with me? Is Ilia Topuria's time this weekend?
Yeah, 100% agree with every single thing you said. I'm not going to add too much and kind of and repeat what you said, but yeah, I mean, Topuria, I think is better everywhere. I think, like you said, better on the mat. He's going to be faster. I think he's better on the feet. Like you said, present day, Josh Emmett can definitely crack power in his hands. He's dangerous, definitely dangerous on the feet. Can change a fight with that power, but coming out party, like you said, I think matchmakers kind of know what it is. It's going to be an exciting fight for as long as it lasts. So you're going to get that entertainment value. But 13-0. It's time for the rocket ship on Topuria's back. Get a name on a resume who just fought for the vacant belt to kind of bolster that resume. I mean the on FanDuel fight to end in KO, so kind of covers you. I think the only win condition for Josh Emmett is to knock Ilia out. I don't see him winning the decision, so that covers you on that side. And I do think Ilia is going to end this fight violently. He can always hurt him and get the sub like he's done in the past. Liam, you talked about that. But I like that. At minus 105, I thought that was going to be a little bit more juiced. Obviously, wish I can get plus money, but I think that's a good way to kind of not eat the minus 400 juice and to kind of cover yourself a little bit. Obviously, if Topuria subs, Emmett, you're tight as fuck holding a KO ticket, but I still think there's a lot of value on that. Like I said earlier in the show, I'm going to parlay Ilia. I'm going to parlay Ilia with Taira at the top of the card, make a nice little lay for myself. The chalky favorite lay, 2 guys, 13-0, undefeated, 2 guys to keep their O. That's going to be how I'm attacking this fight. But great main event, should be exciting for as long as it lasts. 100% agree. I think Ilia wins, finishes this fight and violently in rounds 1, 2, or 3.
In terms of an archetype, man, it reminds me of the Jeremy Stevens fight in a lot of ways, where I think that Josh Emmett is used to being the guy that hits real hard and gets your respect. And I just think in this fight, he's going to be in the pocket, swinging, trading, going back and forth. And I just think the younger guy is going to get to the chin faster, land a little bit harder, and take the shots better. So I agree with you, man. It's a great fight, but I think fireworks for the favorite here. Prodigy, what do you think, my man? Are we sleeping on Josh Emmett?
Yeah, I mean, I think this fight is priced like Emmett has a terminal illness. This is crazy to me.
He's been hanging out with Bruno Silva too much.
Exactly. If he comes out like Bruno Silva did against GM3, then yes, this is correct. But at some point, these guys are going to trade punches. And Josh Emmett should be plus 300 against nobody if you're exchanging in the pocket. And Ilia has no problem exchanging in the pocket. I don't think he's going to get off his grappling that heavily, at least not early. This fight's going. If it goes 5 rounds, Josh Emmett's got the experience. He's been in there with guys like Yair. Ilia is not going to strike like Yair. This is a completely different fight. And Max Holloway was getting his ass kicked by Yair as well. I mean, Josh Emmett, yeah, he should be the underdog 100%. He's got a lot of variables against him. He's, I think, 38 years old. He's coming off a title loss, and he took a lot of damage. And he's going to get up against the undefeated up-and-comer, but this line is just way too juiced. There's definitely some value on Emmett. I'm not going to go out there and put 5 units on him, but he's worth half a unit or 3/4 of a unit in my opinion.
I can't even push back on that. You know, I do think from a money line side, I understand why people are on Emmett here, but it's also just part of what we do is gut and intuition, right? And I've been looking at Ilia Topuria for a while and saying, man, this guy is destined for big things. You know, I thought that the Zhalal fight was a good testament to his character. He was tired in that fight. You know, you could tell that he was not feeling his best, but he kept fighting through it and he kept staying tough, you know, pursuing the finish, pursuing takedowns, getting on top of the guy. And I've seen him tested in terms of adversity. He's been hit, he's been hurt. And I like the way that he recovered and reacted. Whereas Josh Emmett, a lot of times, he kind of dictates the fight that he wants to have. You know, he's had a couple fights that were a little more back and forth. But Calvin Kattar, if I can make a criticism, he's not great at putting people away. You know, he's the Boston finisher. He doesn't finish anybody. I love the guy. Fun fighter. Goes out there and lands 100 significant strikes or more. But he just doesn't finish people. And one of my most proud moments of analysis in my life was I said, I think that Calvin Kattar is going to win by split decision. And the betting value is on Josh Emmett. And then he goes out there and he ekes out the close decision. And everybody's like, oh, I can't believe this. And I'm like, I kind of felt like it was going to be within the margin. But here, I don't think he has the power edge. I think the power is kind of neutral here. I think it's both guys can hit really hard. So for me, the younger guy could probably take the shots better. But again, we're not talking about, you know, it's minus 110. Who do you think is going to win? We're talking about 70+% of the time. Is this going to happen? 75% of the time plus. Is this going to happen? That's a harder question to answer. But for me, I still got to lean with Ilia here. Got to go with my gut. And I think he's going to win this fight and finish it. So nothing that I love from a prop standpoint, right? You go look, everything's under 2-1. You know, the ITD is like minus 250. I don't feel the need to get off the couch and play some of those. But for me, I do think maybe if I was to play it, I would just look for the early finishing props because I do think that Josh Emmett, you know, the longer this fight goes on, he's got more experience. He's been there in those deeper situations. So you'd want to give him some credence. But I think in the early going, he just puts himself on the line too much. I thought that was the case against Yair. And I couldn't agree more in terms of this is a way different matchup. We're not going to see, you know, huge body kicks every 2 seconds and all this stuff. Yair is a funky guy to fight. But I do think that we're going to see a guy who's throwing huge committed shots in the pocket. And I think Josh Emmett's going to be there to take him. So the question is, can he or not? And I think that at this point in his career, with all the accrued damage, I don't think he will be able to. But hard to bet against that at again, a minus 300 or whatever it is price. So if you got in earlier, God bless you for it. But either way, what has been bankable for the UFC, these 145-pound main events, they've been fun. They've been scraps back and forth, you know, fight of the year type contenders, 100 significant strikes on both sides oftentimes. So I'm excited for this fight, man. I think it's going to be a great scrap. And a good fight night to put our best foot forward. So appreciate you guys. We've been here for over 2 hours rocking on these fights, 14 of them broken down. So with that being said, I want to give my guests a chance to let you know where you can find more of their great work. Both these guys putting their nose to the grindstone. So much great analysis been given out today. One of the sharpest conversations we've ever had on this channel. So shout out to you two gentlemen. Appreciate you guys for being here, for making the time. And I'll kick it to my guy, Finesse. Please let the people know where they can find you and all the great stuff you've got going on, brother.
Yeah, you find me right here on Twitter, you know, just trying to grind every single day, give the people, you know, free plays and kind of trying to crush the MLB. NBA is no longer in session, so we're really trying to dig into this MMA stuff. Not really going to promote anything. I try to use these times to kind of give the hosts of these shows their flowers. I mean, UFC is a fucking grind. MMA in itself is a grind. I was talking with Prodigy before we started. Probably the toughest, one of the toughest, if not the toughest sport to be consistently profitable in. And that's something that you've done. You grind in every single week. There's fights almost every single week in some organization out there. So, the thoroughness that you attack these fights with, the precision you attack these fights with, is I respect it a lot. Is to be respected. So the content you're putting out for the people for absolutely free, it's amazing work. So I'm glad I got an opportunity to be on here. I'm happy you had me. My goal of this was to try to keep up with you guys and to get smarter, and I think I accomplished that today. Kind of chopping it up with you guys. So, but yeah, really look forward to it. I think we broke down some amazing fights, got some good value. It should be a really, really good card, a free card on ABC. Starts early, so get your put your alarms on and stuff like that. But yeah, I think a lot of money is going to be made from the show. So I appreciate you, Prodigy. I appreciate you for chopping it up. And yeah, that's all I got, bro. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely, man. Glad to call you a friend of the show now. Great appearance. Would love to have you back in the future. Thought you crushed it, man. So thank you for all the great insight and analysis. And you guys can find more information on our guy Finesse in the description box below. So make sure you do that, support and show love. Prodigy, my man, so good to have you back, brother. Please let the people know where they can find you, all the great work that you've got going on, brother.
Yeah, I think we got a great card on Saturday, day card. I think it's one of those fun cards where we could have, half the winners are underdogs. Maybe 7 or 8 dogs come through. That's always a good time. I want to give a shout out to you, Liam. I think this is the 3rd or 4th time I've been on the show. Always appreciate it. Very impressed by our guy Finesse here. He does multiple sports, and to know this much about UFC is impressive. So good job. And you can find me on Twitter, Prodigy MMA. That's about it.
I love it. Also, he's too humble. Track third party very successfully at betmma.tip. So all the information you need for Prodigy in the information box below. Huge thank you to my 2 guests as well for the kind words. Guys, I promise you there's no gun being held to their head. I'm not making them say this. I truly appreciate the kind words, fellas. Very humbling and very gratifying. We got the sharpest chat in the game that spends a lot of time with us breaking down these fights. So couldn't do it without them. Couldn't do it without you 2 guys as my great guests. And couldn't do it without this UFC opportunity. So each and every week, guys, it's my pleasure to break down these fights. It's my honor that you all do it with us, and hope that you guys will join us next week when we do it all over again. So God bless you all. Enjoy the fights. Make sure you get subscribed, drop a like on this goddamn video if you haven't already. 2 hours down the tubes. But guys, I hope you've enjoyed every minute. I know I have, and I hope that the guests have. So see you guys next time. Until then, let's cash some bets, let's win some money, and let's do it all over again.